An injured person lies amid ruins, debris, and smoke. Nearby, a masked young man with messy dark hair lies with blood or dirt on his face, making broken sounds. The masked young man lies unconscious while another person stands beside him, holding a small potion and apologizing before taking it. A silhouette with a shovel stands among the ruins. The masked young man regains consciousness and looks determined. A masked person with a tool stands over an injured figure begging for help. He promises to save the injured person if he survives. A fair-haired person lies wounded and smiles with relief. The masked person faces a huge dragon amid destruction, while the blonde man declares that he will survive. Thus begins the story of a hero trapped in a dungeon. Several hours earlier, a group gathered at the dungeon entrance. An elf-like character warned the others. A sturdy man in a beret thanked everyone for coming and announced that they would explore the dungeon. Their goal was to find artifacts. These rare dungeon items had unique powers and effects. An adventurer promised to share valuable finds with those who performed well and offered them a chance to become his subordinates. A hooded person with a shovel watched as another member boasted about his noble family. The hooded person found everything boring and irritating. The group set off, calling Wade to follow them. The young man in the hood with a shovel looks down, his gaze focused. He reflects that he will find his enemy no matter what, no matter how long it takes. The man in the beret with a satisfied expression announces the start and urges everyone to show what they are capable of. The person in the hood and mask standing nearby muses that he needs the detection artifact and nothing else. He notes that at this moment, he had no idea what was coming. The group moves deeper into the dungeon, followed by the hooded, masked young man carrying a shovel. He wonders what awaits him and how long he will remain there. The adventurers advance through the dark dungeon with torches. A blond young man spots several goblins charging from the cave. One goblin lunges forward with a vicious snarl. The goblin is suddenly cut in half. The hooded adventurer pulls his shovel from the ground. The others stare in surprise before continuing forward. The blonde adventurer urges everyone to move faster while another member fights an enemy nearby. The commander in a beret orders the group forward as the hooded man watches. The group continues deeper into the darkness. The blonde adventurer tells the masked man that the aristocrat quickly revealed his true nature. The masked man agrees. The blonde man asks his name, but the masked man first reminds him that the aristocrat is their client and must be protected. He introduces himself as Wade, an adventurer specializing in dungeons. Wade says his goal is to find someone, and the blonde man hopes he succeeds. The man asks whether Wade lost his weapon. Wade raises his shovel and explains that it serves as both a cutting and blunt weapon. The blonde adventurer calls him stingy, but Wade replies that the shovel is cheap and easily replaced. Laughing, the adventurer asks Wade to demonstrate his throwing skills. As the group advances, the blonde adventurer notices several dark crystals, including one unusually large stone. He explains that they are exploding stones found throughout the dungeon. The commander warns that they release deadly heat, while Wade advises turning back because stronger monsters appear beyond the middle level. The commander refuses, insisting on obtaining the artifacts and ordering everyone to earn their reward. He reveals a return scroll large enough for everyone, rejects further objections, and orders the group onward. The commander excitedly spots a treasure or artifact resting on a raised platform. A masked and hooded figure sharply warns him, stating it's dangerous, while the commander, ignoring the warning, rushes forward toward the target, his silhouette quickly receding. A giant foot crashes down, shattering the ground. A glowing magic seal appears beneath the group, and the masked figure realizes it is a trap. The floor turns into a giant teleportation circle. The masked figure recognizes teleportation magic, and then an overwhelming presence appears as two glowing eyes. A dragon with spread wings appears above the group in a large chamber. One adventurer cries out in fear while the masked figure watches in horror. The commander in the beret screams in terror. The dragon roars and the commander collapses to the ground, whimpering. The masked figure curses, realizing the commander has fled, and calls him a scoundrel. The dragon fires a powerful energy beam at the adventurers, causing a massive explosion. The masked figure realizes the situation is dire. The masked figure sits among the debris, screaming, while the surviving adventurers stand nearby in shock. Then one of them collapses, his body disintegrating. After the dragon's attack, several people lie dead on the ground, their faces twisted in pain and fear. Among them lies a dark-haired young man with a smudged face. A hooded figure rises and thinks that he will get revenge because he made a promise. In the darkness below, silhouettes continue moving forward. Amid the smoke and destruction, the masked young man grips a potion and declares that he cannot die here. A shovel lies beside him. The hooded figure stands before the enormous dragon and declares that he will survive. The masked youth delivers a powerful blow, shaking the ground. A deafening impact follows, and the silhouette of the struck creature appears through the dust. The masked young man attacks with his shovel while dodging the dragon's assault. He says he cannot stop and must keep moving. The masked youth drives his shovel into the dragon's wing or limb, drawing blood. Then he falls in pain as a huge explosion destroys the tunnel walls and ceiling. The masked man, injured by the impact, lies on the ground, letting out a short cry. He is in pain. Then attention shifts to the surrounding walls where black crystals are visible. He notes that these are exploding rocks. The masked man, despite his wounds, looks at them with determination and says he has to try. The injured man lies on the ground while another, leaning over him, takes an item from him, saying he will borrow it. Meanwhile, in the distance, a dragon's silhouette, engulfed in flames, causes widespread destruction. Then, a powerful explosion occurs, sending debris flying in all directions. A hooded man stands, observing the devastation. He then extracts something from the body of a defeated opponent, speaking as he does so. A young man in a mask stands on a hill, looking at a dragon's head as it lifts, letting out a sound. The young man's gaze, covered in mud or bloodstains, is full of determination. He declares his presence, addressing the dragon as a filthy lizard. His determined eyes stare straight ahead. The dragon spews a powerful beam, aiming at the masked man, who dodges the attack. Rays of energy emanate from the monster's maw. The masked man lunges forward, evading the stream, and seizes the moment to strike back. He states that now is the time for action. Finally, the young man in the mask regains his composure, his gaze focused. He utters, "Tear it to pieces." A potion is seen in the sky. The dark sky is visible. He notices that he doesn't have a scratch on him, while fire and destruction are visible all around. His shovel stands nearby. The masked man, holding a certain tool, delivers a blow. His body is contorted with effort, and a dark silhouette follows behind him. The strike is aimed at a winged creature resembling a dragon. The adventurer looks at the dragon. He notices that his hand and head are intact. He asks about his weapon. Wade looks at the dragon, and the dragon looks back at him. The dragon extends its hand. The dragon remarks that it likes his persistence. He notes that the adventurer will become his student and inherit the dungeon master's power. The adventurer looked at him, not understanding what he meant. The injured man lies amidst the debris, his body contorted. Smoke or steam billows around him, and his face expresses confusion. He wonders about his condition and what happened to him. The dragon remarks that he belongs to him, and he will not let the young man go. The young man wakes up in bed, his gaze bewildered. He asks where some filthy lizard is, then notices he has no wounds. He asks again, "What filthy lizard?" A woman with long blonde hair and horns on her head, resembling a dragon or demon, is shown in the foreground. She introduces herself as Nia, and it sounds rude. In the background, a man stares at her with his mouth wide open, expressing surprise. The woman asks if she's enchanted him and tells him he can stare at her all he wants. The woman with horns and wings, resembling a demon, expresses that she liked the man's persistence and it would have been a shame if he had died. The dungeon's power, she says, healed his wounds. The man lies in bed while the woman leans over him. She informs him that she transferred her power to him and he recovered. The woman with horns, a tail, and wings, resembling a dragon or demon, addresses the man by his name. She tells him she has decided to make him her mate. And all the treasures she has collected now belong to him as well. A treasure chest is next to her. She urges him to rejoice. Nia explains that the bracelet increases the wearer's strength. She shows him a sword that can extend. She shows an artifact that reveals whatever one desires. She informs him that this bracelet increases the wearer's strength and the shield reflects magic. The pendant, she says, is a detection artifact that shows what the owner wants and is good for finding loot. Wade took the artifact in his hands and was delighted, calling it the detection artifact. Nia asked him where he was going. Wade says he needs to go out and find someone using this artifact. Nia tells him he can't leave the dungeon. The man asks what the reason is. The creature informs him that he is alive because his soul is sealed in the core. If he goes to the surface, he will die. She said that if he wants to leave, he needs an heir. Wade got angry and said she was deceiving him. Nia explains that this is not the case. He states that he cannot stay because he has unfinished business. Wade started to leave. He was happy when he got out. He began to smile broadly. Wade was lying on the floor at the entrance. Nia observes all this, saying that she warned him. She declares that she came to save him and that he should be grateful. She notes that if she's fallen in love, there's nothing that can be done about it. Wade asks if they're messing with him and what kind of master he is. In the end, he promises that he will stop being one. A hooded man stands next to a dragon, observing it. He recalls his youth when he was on the brink of death after battling a dragon. He managed to find an artifact in a dungeon, and he notes that he's only a few steps away from his destination. Another dragon lies on the ground, its head turned to the side. The man walks through a desolate landscape. The title of the work speaks of the adventures of a traveler who lives in a labyrinth. The artist and author are listed on the page. A spherical pendant hangs on a cord. The traveler stands before a blocked entrance, thinking that if he can't use this exit, he'll dig his own way out. He talks about his misfortune. Suddenly, something emerges from underground with accompanying sounds and grabs the man's leg. The man falls to the ground and the creature drags him underground. His head disappears beneath the surface. The traveler, seized by something, feels pain and exclaims in annoyance, as his attempt to escape has failed. He asks why this happened. The small creature nearby explains that it's a restriction of the dungeon master. The man seems to realize what happened and replies that he probably understands. The small creature, reassuring him, says that he shouldn't worry, as his body will immediately recover from the magical power emanating from it. The man, judging by his expression, agrees with this statement. The traveler regretfully notes that he has finally reached his destination. He ponders finding someone to become the dungeon master, but immediately dismisses the idea, believing that no one would want to take on such a responsibility. He also says that he doesn't like deceiving anyone. A small creature is next to him. Then a woman with horns and wings appears and asks why he is so eager to get out of here. She reminds him that he could live here, just passing the time. The hooded man declares that his goal is revenge. He asserts that he will definitely get out of here and needs to find someone, no matter what. The woman with horns and wings looks at him. Then Wade, holding his head, decides that for now, it's better to explore this dungeon. The traveler and the winged woman are in a cave. The hooded man addresses her, asking her name. The woman, smiling joyfully, introduces herself as Neva and adds that she is a proud red dragon. The traveler, named Wade, introduces himself as a simple adventurer. Neva expresses her surprise upon hearing his words about being a simple adventurer. The winged woman, Neva, exclaims upon seeing goblins. She and Wade fight several goblins. One goblin flies back from a blow, then Wade delivers a blow that sends another goblin flying. Another goblin, screaming in fear, falls after being hit. Wade, looking intently, realizes he's seeing explosive powder, recognizing it by its characteristic color. A powerful explosion occurs, causing him pain. Nia exclaims Wade's name, expressing annoyance and admitting her carelessness. After the explosion, Wade is lying on the ground. Goblins look at him in fear. Then the silhouette of a man in a hood with a shovel appears, saying that he hopes they are ready. Suddenly, Wade attacks a goblin, kicking up clouds of dust. He swings his shovel, ready for another strike. One of the goblins drops its bag in fear, while another retreats with wide eyes, letting out a surprised sound. The injured goblin backs away in terror. Wade, holding his shovel, watches the defeated goblins, noting that he has enough problems without them. He then delivers a powerful blow with his shovel to the wall, which begins to crumble and fall apart, leaving a large dent. One of the goblins, its face contorted with fear, flees. Nia exclaims Wade's name, warning him that one of their opponents has escaped and is heading back to its nest. She suggests they pursue it. Wade, judging by his expression, is displeased with the situation. He states there's no need to chase after such a small creature. Nia, looking surprised, asks what he's talking about, as they were only defending themselves. Nia declares that their target is the Goblin Chief or the Goblin King, adding that he's quite intelligent. She also explains that goblins choose their leader from ordinary individuals through duels. Wade seemingly agrees, noting that this is a completely different matter. He orders them to move faster. He also points out that if they're lucky, they might even be able to appoint a new successor. Nia excitedly exclaims how thrilling this is. They then begin moving through the tunnel. Nia asks Wade why he didn't use his body during their fight. She also asks if he meant it was a technique for taking damage. Wade replies that he used it to the fullest until his body felt like it was tearing apart from the strain. She apologizes. Nia notes that this is why he was the only one who could endure it. Wade calls her a monstrous creature. Nia, smiling, says she likes his persistence. She claims that, in her opinion, human life is just a fragile tool, vulnerable, delicate matter that can end in an instant. Nia confesses to Wade that his determination, which surpasses even the instinct for self-preservation, as well as his courage not to fear pain, attracted her. Wade in turn asks what she means. Nia points to a passage in the wall and says that's the spot. Wade then begins to climb the sheer wall, moving upward with confidence. The winged woman and Wade enter a dark cave, where they are surrounded by numerous goblins. Wade asks if this place is the goblin nest. The woman confirms that it is their true home. She stares intently at the man, preparing for battle. Nia, her face contorted with anger, addresses the goblins, calling them vile and demanding they know their place. She accuses them of injuring her male and declares that she will leave no trace of them. She then unleashes a powerful fireball that streaks towards the goblins, leaving destruction in its wake. Flames rage throughout the cave, engulfing some of the goblins. Wade, watching this, notes that dragons are certainly amazing, but he's not ready to give up yet. Holding his shovel, he attacks the surviving goblins. Wade and Nia continue to fight the remaining opponents. Suddenly, a loud voice commands them to stop. A large goblin appears, declaring that they were the ones who attacked his brothers. Wade and Nia halt as the goblin approaches them. Wade asks if he's the goblin boss and states that he's exactly who they've been waiting for. The giant goblin declares that he won't forgive them and that they are now corpses. Nia tells him she won't fight as it's his turn now. Wade exclaims that defeating a dragon makes her the dungeon master. She declares that she'll keep the smaller ones away until the goblin becomes king. She also expresses a desire to see how brave the goblin is. Wade exclaims in surprise, asking when she became his lover. The big goblin introduces himself as Vega. Hearing this, Wade replies that it's nice to meet him. Suddenly, the goblin attacks and Wade dodges his strike, which shatters the ground. Wade then retaliates. Wade lands a blow on Vega. He notes that the goblin is very strong and physically well-developed. Wade realizes that, in addition to the goblin boss's raw strength, his physical enhancement has no limits. Vega, his face contorted with rage, declares that he's not easily defeated and prepares to deliver a powerful blow. Wade lies on the ground, wounded, and asks what he should do. Nia, appearing beside him, reminds him that if he goes to the surface, he'll die. She advises him to simply go back and his body will immediately recover thanks to the dungeon's magical power. Wade, judging by his expression, understands this. Wade, gritting his teeth, activates his physical enhancement without limits. His body begins to break down, but he knows that with the dungeon's help, it will constantly regenerate. He then delivers a powerful strike. Wade, using superior enhancement and an ultra attack, lands a powerful blow on Vega, sending him flying. The goblin boss falls to the ground, letting out a pained sound. Wade approaches his defeated opponent and declares that this is the end. Vega, screaming in pain, is sent flying. Wade lands another blow on him. The goblin boss falls, making a distinct sound. Wade, looking focused, continues to attack. The heroes find themselves in a spacious hall with columns where torches burn, illuminating the passage. Nia exclaims how amazing Wade is. Wade, sitting on the floor, irritably says that this is what she wanted. Nia declares that they should keep going and conquer the entire dungeon and that her rescue proved useful. Several goblins watch them from below. The giant goblin Vega addresses Wade, asking if he likes it. Wade remembers that goblins survive by submitting to the strong and that this is their code. He also recalls them saying he was no match. Wade, sitting on the floor, says he understands and that they shouldn't worry, because that's just how goblins are. He declares that they are now master and servant and the dungeon belongs to him. Vega, with his arms crossed, replies that he can't do that. Wade asks him to become the dungeon master. Wade yells at Vega, begging him not to agree under any circumstances because he needs to get out of there. He apologizes and runs off, saying he needs to step away. Nia exclaims in surprise, asking what's going on. Wade, rubbing the back of his head, states that it looks like he'll have to find another master. Neva smiles and tells Wade that the way he fought just now was magnificent, and it excited her. She adds that he must be exhausted and offers to calm him down by sharing her magical power. Wade exclaims in fright, asking her to wait and not get so excited. He tries to stop her, but Neva is already reaching out to him. A few days later, the fox-eared girl in her room exclaims that this is very difficult. She notes that 5 days have passed since Wade disappeared into the dungeon, and she declares that they are going to visit him, as it's already decided. A commanding man, resembling a chief, raised his fist, announcing a peace treaty in honor of their new leader. He demanded food and drinks be prepared and also announced that a grand ceremony was being prepared in the lair. A young man in an apron stood by a table with goblins nearby, and he wondered if anyone knew how to cook. Another character offered his help. The young man stood by a cauldron, stirring something in it, while the goblins around him watched the cooking process. Then a large meat carcass appeared on a plate, surrounded by small round items, possibly fruits or vegetables. The cook bustled around a table where goblins were already setting out dishes and drinks. One of them seemed to be trying to drag a large piece of meat. A commotion arose as the goblins scurried around the food. A horned creature, resembling a demon, exclaimed with a joyful expression how delicious it was. Next to him sat the protagonist, who also expressed his surprise at the taste and asked what kind of meat it was. Another character noted that the taste wasn't bad at all, and that was the main thing. Then she added that Wade was an excellent cook. Nia, with wide eyes, exclaimed that it was a stone centipede. She laughed joyfully, looking at something. The young man said that someone was acting like a child and called it touching. Another character grumbled discontentedly, expressing disgust, and then indignantly exclaimed about the waste. Later, the protagonist sat holding a mug and said that he wouldn't be able to get out unless he stopped being the dungeon master. She suggested continuing to explore the dungeon as much as possible and asked if he would look for a successor. Wade, looking worried, asked what was wrong. In response, a question was heard asking what for, and then Nia asked if she knew any monster who could take her place. Later, Nia offered Wade to stay with him forever. She said she didn't want to part with him and could grant his wish, and then Wade wondered why she couldn't just go to the surface with him. Finally, Nia exclaimed in surprise that it was a human custom, a proposal, a relationship with the intention of marrying and being together forever. Nia joyfully exclaimed that if they needed a candidate, there was always a skeleton archer, as usual. The main character looked at her in surprise, and then a small demoness appeared with a flushed face, quietly mumbling something. Soon, the demoness announced that they had found a suitable successor. The protagonist agreed that they would accept him. The silhouette of a hooded archer appeared next to them, and the little demoness thought he might be the ghost of a former adventurer. She then added that he seemed skilled and intelligent. Standing in the cave, the main character asked if this was the area swarming with skeletons. Someone pointed to the ground, asking if this was the spot. Then the demoness happily said she was so glad and reminded the protagonist that he wanted to marry her. The main character exclaimed in surprise, then indignantly asked where she got that idea. Soon, the demoness approached the main character and suggested they exchange eternal vows, calling him by name. He replied that there was no need to tease him. The main character seemed to recoil from the demoness, who let out a loud scream. The demoness then appeared to be in shock as something like an energy wave or explosion erupted from her body. She cried out. The main character exclaimed in horror, calling her master. The demoness, meanwhile, looked ahead in fear, her body glowing. Nia, surrounded by some substance, screamed, clutching her head. The main character was backing away, saying he would stop them for a while and that the master's safety was a high priority. He also added that this should be enough and threw something resembling a crystal. Then an explosion occurred, accompanied by a sound. The demoness was caught off guard, her eyes widening in surprise. The main character exclaimed in surprise, addressing Master Wade. A man in glasses and a cloak greeted him and asked how he was doing, holding some kind of tool. Then an explosion occurred and one of the characters, thrown back by the shockwave, noted that ordinary physical attacks didn't work on slimes. Large, droplet-shaped creatures were all around. A man with shining eyes held a stone in his hand, explaining that he had channeled magical power into it. He then exclaimed, delivering a powerful blow towards the enemy. A group of characters fought amidst bubbling liquid, while the demoness, with a satisfied expression, said she would see how it ended and help a little. Then a large, round object emerged from the liquid. Wade exclaimed in surprise that the core had appeared and suggested they go after it. The new hero resolutely replied that he agreed. A girl with ears with a joyful cry rushed forward. She then pierced something with her sword and splashes flew around her. Later, the girl exclaimed with satisfaction that she had done a great job, and another small demoness thanked her. The main character watched them, leaning on his axe. The main character, his face partially obscured, announced that it was his turn now. He was going to use the dungeon master's regenerative power. He then exclaimed, and flashes of energy appeared around him. His body seemed to undergo a transformation, surrounded by dark, jagged lines as if emitting a powerful aura. The main character, with his axe raised above his head, brought it down on the enemy with splashes visible around him. Soon, he exclaimed with a slight smirk and said it was too easy. Plumes of smoke swirled around him, and his hand continued to glow, indicating the use of power. The girl with the ears was astonished by what she saw. She exclaimed with delight, asking him to teach her too, adding that she had never seen anything like it. With wide eyes, she asked what kind of technique it was, stating that it was amazing. Then the protagonist suggested that she calm down and talk calmly first. He stood next to the little demoness, while the horned demoness crossed her arms over her chest. The demonesses and the protagonist found themselves trapped, submerged in a sticky substance. The girl with the ears exclaimed in surprise that they had been caught. The protagonist, trying to get out, realized with indignation that there were more of them. A head flew out of the sticky mass with a crash, followed by the sound of destruction. Soon, the demoness exclaimed in surprise, asking what had happened. Far in the depths of the cave stood a mysterious hooded figure. The protagonist, looking at the skeleton, asked if it was the same skeleton. In the background, several goblins were kneeling. The man in the hood answered affirmatively. The little demoness asked if it was a reward for saving them. Soon, the protagonist concluded that it wasn't out of good intentions. The hooded figure asked if gold coins would suffice. Then the protagonist exclaimed in surprise, telling him to wait, and added that he had a request. The hooded figure stood there, and the protagonist seemed to wonder if this character was ignoring him, feeling as if he had been rejected. The hooded figure stated that he had come here to find a successor and wanted the protagonist to be that person. Then the figure asked if he was interested in the role of dungeon master. The little demoness, looking worried, exclaimed that the protagonist hadn't returned from the dungeon and she had been very worried. Then she happily added that she was so glad he was okay, calling him master, and Nia suggested they forget about it. Later, she said shyly that she was so ashamed, and the protagonist asked if that meant she had come looking for him and gotten lost. The little demoness asked in surprise, to which the answer was that it was impossible. Soon, with wide eyes, she suggested they get out of there right now. A loud, surprised exclamation was heard. Then the protagonist, frowning, asked if that meant she had become the dungeon master, while the demoness, with a joyful expression, said that she was a sexy dragon lady. The little demoness, covering her face with her hands, exclaimed that she couldn't believe it, adding that it was too much. The little demoness was thinking thoughtfully while another character answered affirmatively. The protagonist expressed concern that it was true, and because of it, he couldn't get to the surface, and he also thought about the need to find a suitable replacement. The girl with the ears exclaimed with a determined look, adding that she would then help find a successor. The protagonist said with a smile that he knew, and the little girl with her ears down thought about someone who had supported her when nothing worked out. He noted that it wouldn't be easy. The little girl with ears, looking sad, said that although she had tried hard to become stronger, they hadn't given her a future. Then she was told that she was useless and fired. She, in a hood, noted that she had left the guild she was in several years ago. Then she added that they had met back then. Another character noted that she was getting too close and also said that she was very fast and agile, but in her current state, she wouldn't be able to do anything. She was told that she wasn't using her talent to the fullest, and she was offered help if possible. The man in the hood introduced himself as Wade. He expressed a desire to give advice to the current person who was taking risks in vain, which is why he intervened in the conversation. A strange creature with wings struck the little demoness, and then someone said that after that, the master trained him and that he deserved it. The demoness asked why he was so kind to her and added, hadn't he told her that he just wanted to help? The little demoness then sat deep in thought, as someone remarked that fewer people should regret their helplessness. Later, the protagonist smiled and told them not to frown so much, offering them a drink. The little demoness exclaimed joyfully, and another character added something. The little demoness joyfully exclaimed that the protagonist had helped her immensely, and now it was her turn to repay him so he could rely on her without hesitation. She also suggested they return to the surface together. The protagonist agreed. The three of them then started walking somewhere. The other hooded character noticed someone getting too close and called him a pup. Later, the little demoness declared with determination that Wade belonged to her and she wouldn't give him to anyone. The protagonist looked at her in surprise. Suddenly, a loud cry rang out and the protagonist exclaimed in horror, calling out to his master. The man awkwardly said that it was too much, then indignantly asked what this was and how he was supposed to deal with it. The little demoness, with her hands raised, screamed for someone to stop the other character. Something crashed down from above, accompanied by sounds of impacts and destruction. Rumors were spreading in the capital that the target was deep within the dungeon, and someone expressed doubt about its possibility. A long-haired woman named Laura, the Dragon Slayer, confirmed the information. A man sitting on a throne declared his intention to kill the dragon flawlessly, while a question arose about the Dragon Slayer's strength. The warrior found he couldn't move, his body refused to obey. The girl with ears also felt she was at her limit. The girl expressed her displeasure, stating that her stomach hurt abnormally. The hero looked down at the small creature, which was apparently the cause of it all. She then pointed out that even the goblins were suffering from hunger. The adventurer pondered how such a large group of goblins had managed to survive, expressing his surprise. He noted that in this situation, they couldn't act without orders. If they considered a long search, they would still need to make the best decision. The character with ears wondered if they could solve this problem alone, believing they lacked the knowledge of an expert. Suddenly, the knight exclaimed, realizing she might be the perfect candidate. The other character with ears expressed doubt, asking if that was really the case. The knight then pointed to the small creature and instructed it to deliver a letter to the magic shop in town, to which it agreed. A figure approached, seemingly having brought someone along. A happy sorceress in a hat greeted her acquaintance, asking how he was doing. The warrior remarked that the sorceress seemed to have grown. The other character with ears laughed, saying she would curse him for that. The sorceress then announced that she was also the owner of the magic shop. The warrior inquired who she was. The sorceress explained that she was a recognized Grand Master and her friend was Professor Demona. The sorceress introduced herself as Mage Dolt. The warrior and his companion exclaimed in surprise, watching her. The sorceress warned them not to call Dolt a child, claiming it was taboo. She then ordered them not to move anymore. The sorceress added that Sunny had already told her what happened. The warrior asked if she had become the dungeon lord, and the sorceress replied that it was now her concern. The sorceress informed them that they should go and find new acquaintances. She also noted that although they couldn't move, their situation wasn't that serious. The sorceress smiled and declared that they could provide everything they needed for themselves. She also said that the problem of food shortage was easy to solve. The sorceress expressed a desire to grow vegetables there, and her companion asked what she planned to grow. The sorceress explained that this was why she brought seeds that had been modified for magic use. She asserted that the level of magic in a dungeon primarily depended on its owner. Wade asked if there was really so little magic in this dungeon. The sorceress regretfully confirmed that in that case, vegetables wouldn't grow. The warrior concluded that if there wasn't enough, it would be difficult to grow creatures that could be used as food. He acknowledged that the previous owner was a dragon, so a difference in magic level was inevitable. Nia states that she can lubricate herself with a sealing knot. The sorceress from below doubts that human magic will be enough and asks if there's a way to increase it. The warrior and his companion exclaim in surprise. Wade asks what this new development is. The sorceress explains that it's the art of love, and by engaging in it, they circulate and amplify each other's magic. Dolta wonders if she wants to join. Sana covers her face with her hands, expressing shock. She flatly refuses to do it. Meanwhile, another creature laments, stating that these creatures are not tasty at all. The man apparently wonders if the creature really doesn't like them, as he doesn't find them too bad. He then expresses concern, believing they will all starve before finding what's needed. He also adds that he'll be very thin anyway if that happens. The adventurer ponders how the goblins managed to survive in such a large group, expressing surprise. He notes that in this situation they cannot act without orders. If they consider a long search, they must make the best decision regardless. Her companion asks if there's another way to increase power. The sorceress states that they need to attract adventurers. The sorceress explains that when creatures die in dungeons, their magical power returns. Therefore, she claims that to be effective, they could command adventure objectives from outside. The sorceress adds that they can set up special traps everywhere. The man emphatically states that they definitely won't be doing that. Dolter agrees, saying he knew the sorceress would say that. the sorceress joyfully exclaims, saying they have no choice but to engage in many indecent things. The sorceress, with a smile, announces the existence of alternative methods and says she's lucky with everyone. She points to flowers that emit magic and claims that planting a large number will increase the effect. The sorceress explains that traveling such a long distance in a month would be too difficult. She also notes that every little step increases the dungeon's magical potential. Meanwhile, the warrior feels strange, not sensing any magical power. His companion asks if that's true. Suddenly, the sorceress declares that the magic is recovering and exclaims how amazing it is. She announces that everything is ready, and with that, their magic problems are solved. The sorceress suggests sowing more seeds. Her companion asks how long they'll have to wait for them to sprout. The sorceress assures her that the seeds are designed to grow quickly and bear fruit in the shortest possible time. She urges everyone to look here, pointing to the garden. The man, looking around, expresses surprise, saying that everything happened in the blink of an eye. His companion asks if it isn't wonderful, as they'll always have a fresh supply of vegetables for snacks. The sorceress suggests harvesting all the vegetables. Suddenly, a pumpkin begins to move and a creature emerges from it. It quickly gains speed and all the heroes look frightened. The head that emerged from the pumpkin seems to have grown, and the sorceress expresses concern, believing they must have overdone it with the nutrients. She then states that they seem to have a vegetable monster. The sorceress's companion asks what's happening. The sorceress explains that the monster absorbs magic from deep within the earth and becomes much stronger. She adds that it's not a bad but rather an inexplicable phenomenon. At the same time, she says there's no need to be so happy. The sorceress also notes that the monster must be filled with a very large amount of magic. A character expresses regret that they'll have to burn the delicious vegetables and says they just need to adjust the fire's power. Another states that they must quickly defeat it, as one dragon strike should take care of it. However, the first character replies that he can't do it that precisely, so they'll have to defeat him another way. Meanwhile, the companion joyfully announces that she's brought the artifact, and the warrior acknowledges it as excellent work. The sorceress notes that it's the dungeon's treasure. The sorceress agrees to do it. Her companion wonders how she'll be able to anticipate an attack if the enemy disappears from sight. The sorceress warns Sunny to be careful, suspecting the enemy will attack her. The companion asks in surprise, what and how is that? The sorceress explains that when he enters her, she'll be at his feet, and then Sunny will need to raise her shield. The sorceress also asks Sunny to take the laser beams directly. Sunny agrees, and the sorceress considers it a good sign. The character with the shield declares that he loves vegetables and eats them every day, considering greens the coolest and tastiest. A pumpkin-shaped monster approaches. The next moment, it emits a powerful beam that hits the shield. The character, covered by the shield, cries out from the strain. The heroine joyfully exclaims that she reflected the magic. The powerful beam fired by the pumpkin monster ricochets away. The warrior, addressing her, says he understands and asks her to leave it to him. The sorceress, looking worried, notes that the magical energy supply from the ley lines has stopped, adding that it will be very difficult for them now. The hunter moves forward quickly, preparing to strike. The pumpkin monster on the ground looks towards a rustling sound. Suddenly, a shadow appears and the pumpkin expresses surprise. The girl with horns declares that the final blow will be hers. She delivers a powerful strike that creates an energy wave crashing into the ground. The pumpkin, having taken the hit, expresses displeasure. Small particles shatter and fly off the pumpkin. The knight directs goblins who are harvesting cabbage in a field. One of the goblins happily holds a large cabbage. Meanwhile, the heroine expresses her joy, saying she is very happy. The sorceress remarks that these dungeon vegetables are simply incredible and perfect for eating. She asks the warrior if it isn't a bit unusual. The warrior replies that it seems the vegetable monsters have also calmed down. At the same time, a small creature next to the goblins asks what it should eat. Wade asks the sorceress if she's considered becoming a dungeon master. The sorceress replies that it's an appealing offer, but not for her. She explains that she needs to manage her shop and her customers are waiting. The warrior understands. The sorceress then asks how she can help her friend, offering an artifact for good work. The warrior asks if she's just messing with him. Dolta turns to Wade asking. The sorceress, smiling, asks him if he wants to try something strange with her. The warrior turns away and the sorceress exclaims. Wade realizes she's drunk. The knight looks at the sorceress, who is giggling. Then Nia pulls out a bottle. The demoness also smiles and looks at the sorceress. The sorceress says not to peek. She hands the bottle to the demoness, who begins to drink. A sound like something falling is heard. A character with a sword stands on rubble, surrounded by a devastated landscape. He exclaims how disgusting it is, noting that all of this is on the lower levels. Ruins are visible from above. The hero declares that he prefers dungeons with dragons. He wonders if they have everything they need to confront the threat. It's announced that a dragon hunt will take place in 3 days. Then, a bearded man with an eye patch appears, loudly proclaiming the upcoming dragon hunt. This same character calls on all who seek wealth and glory to join him. A girl is seen sitting on the floor, looking at something with surprise, possibly a scroll or book in front of her. A large waterfall fills the room, cascading into a body of water. Several small creatures are visible in the foreground of the water. A young man sits on a rocky ledge, musing that he didn't know such a place existed. 2 small creatures splash in the water next to him. In the bottom right corner, a jet of water is shown shooting out. A girl with pointed ears warns the young man that if he's carried to the surface, he'll die. She then adds that there's an underwater passage connected to the outside world. The young man expresses regret about the situation. Then, against the dark silhouette of a man and a girl sitting nearby, danger was visible. The girl with pointed ears recalls her time in the guild. The young man asks Sunny what happened. The girl, with her mouth wide open and eyes surprised, exclaims that the Dragon Slayer is gathering adventurers, and they are going to attack this dungeon. The young man, with his arms crossed, states that he knows that name. The girl with pointed ears calls the situation absurd and wonders how anyone dared to claim such a nickname as Dragon Slayer. In the foreground, the silhouette of a veteran hero is visible, one who dared to attack dragons in the past. It's mentioned that his favorite sword is a relic, specially crafted for battling dragons. The young man reasons that in this case, they won't be able to sit idly by, as the Dragon Slayer is eager for the hunt. The girl with pointed ears replies negatively and questions if one can truly avoid such a powerful opponent. The girl with pointed ears warns that he will come for the young man, so there's no point in hiding. Then the young man's silhouette is shown from behind. He begins to say that he never can. The young man's face shows doubt and the word gulp appears below it. The girl with pointed ears looks thoughtfully to the side. The young man declares that it's about survival. He is ready to defend himself by all available means, as he has no other choice. The man adds that he is prepared to repel the attacks of all adventurers to protect his dungeon. The young man utters the phrase, "That's why." He then stands before many creatures, asking for their help as they will protect their dungeon. The young man looks seriously straight ahead. Next to him, below, the girl with pointed ears sits silently. To the right, a wizard in a hat sits at a table, carefully studying a scroll with the girl with pointed ears beside him. Meanwhile, 2 creatures labor, carrying stones. One creature lifts a large stone and the other digs the earth. Then, a clash between 2 characters is shown, accompanied by bright flashes of energy and movement. At the end, the young man's face is visible, covered in spots, possibly dirt or blood, his expression filled with tension. Nia looks towards the young man, who, in turn, asks in surprise what kind of face that is. The young man then sits at a table, deep in thought. A girl with pointed ears hugs him, urging him to share what's on his mind and assuring him they can figure it out together. He looks away and states that she already knows the answer. A gloved hand clenches into a fist, expressing doubt about their ability to defeat the opponent. A voice admits that he's just an ordinary adventurer with no special talents. The young man muses that even with the dungeon's power, he can't compare to a hero with 100 battles under his belt. He looks to the side and notes that it's strange, considering he inspired everyone. He expresses concern that he might end up disappointing them all. The girl with pointed ears firmly tells the young man not to say such things. She explains that this kind of ailment is common among people like him. The young man asks if that's true, and the girl confidently confirms it. She hugs him, assuring him that he has already shown his strength and shouldn't underestimate himself. The girl with pointed ears tells the young man that if he ever doubts himself, he can always rely on her. She looks directly at him, confidently stating that she believes in him. The young man, in turn, looks at her in surprise. The girl with pointed ears asks the young man if he feels better. The young man replies that he's fine now and thanks her. The girl then says that the others were worried about him too, thinking something was wrong. He exclaims and asks her to stop pushing him. Creatures lie on the floor, with the young girl with pointed ears and the young man standing nearby, looking at them. The young man asks what they're doing. The creatures on the floor make excuses, claiming they're not at fault, and one of them points at the girl, accusing her of slipping. A giant creature holds a man, and the girl with pointed ears points at him. The young man appears from around the corner. The girl laughs loudly. The man, in turn, reflects on how lucky he is to have them. It's reported that 3 days have passed. Several creatures emerge from the ground, one of them holding an item. The young man warns them to be careful, as these opponents are tough. A huge gelatinous creature moves forward. The adventurers prepare to attack, one of them pointing forward and ordering them to aim for the core. Someone's leg falls to the ground. Then something moves quickly, leaving a trail behind it. The young man's face shows surprise and shock as he looks to the side. A warrior in armor and a helmet exclaims in surprise, asking what's happening. A dark-haired man accuses someone of wasting his money and urges them to move forward. The armored warrior orders them to get up, as there's no time to rest. The same warrior, now in a close-up with a menacing expression, declares that the dragon who humiliated him must pay for it. Nearby, creatures covered in spots and injuries are visible. A top-down view shows a person's legs, and a voice behind them announces that the injured can recover. Then, a man with an eye patch and a sword appears, stating that they are slowing them down. He says these creatures are constantly trying to push them back. The man with the sword adds that it's as if they're trying to trap them and drive them away from here. The man with the eye patch addresses someone, calling him a cowardly dragon who avoids him. He then declares that from now on, only those who aren't afraid to go further should follow him. Someone's eyes are visible in the darkness. The armored warrior says not to do whatever they please and declares that this squad belongs to him. A pale-haired young man seems to be rescuing someone, saying he'll lift them up. An armored warrior exclaims that the passage has collapsed and orders him to pull them out immediately. The armored warrior reappears, looking down with an angry expression. He clenches his fist, exclaiming that they'll never reach that path because it's a completely different level compared to what they saw last time. A helmeted warrior, with his mouth wide open, shouts, asking what the hell is going on. He then finds himself inside a glowing triangular prism, still exclaiming the same question. A man states that everything is going great and the trap is working. He explains that they set traps to neutralize the enemy, not to kill them. The more fighters stop fighting, the fewer their numbers and the more help it will provide to their wounded comrades. The young man looks away, while a sharp-eared girl next to him muses that if they keep acting this way, they might be able to force the enemy to retreat. The sharp-eared girl asks about the method for hunting dragons. The young man muses that their only problem is himself. A sphere appears and a cloaked figure stands before it, possibly the hunter. The young man admits that he's incredibly strong and his title Dragon Slayer is no joke. A man with an eye patch looks away. Then, the silhouette of an attacking person declares that he is a true monster. Next, the cloaked man holding a sword calmly walks over fallen goblins, saying that their traps won't be able to stop him. A voice behind them expresses the thought that perhaps he'll have to fight him alone. The sharp-eared girl asks the young man if he's sure. The young man replies that it's fine and he's going to crush this Brad. He confidently states that with the power of the dungeon, he is practically immortal. The man, in turn, reports that if things get tough, he will blow himself up and take the enemy with him, which would be a terrible end. The sharp-eared girl shouts that she's going with the young man. He, in turn, refuses. The young man reminds her that they are dealing with a dragon slayer, so she would only get in the way. He tells her that he needs her to do something else. The girl looks at him in surprise. A squad of warriors moves through dense trees. They continue their journey through the forest. A veteran armored warrior muses that this place used to look different and asks him to believe him. A man hidden in the darkness observes from behind the foliage, his eyes wide open. He discreetly watches what's happening. Below, branches and leaves conceal his presence. Sharp eyes observe the events. In the next moment, a warrior delivers a powerful blow, creating a surge of force. Below, a man is shown, possibly affected by this blow, his face partially hidden. A helmeted warrior surrounded by currents exclaims as his body is swept aside. Then, a hooded man is shown, who likely carried out the attack. Below, another man with a face full of anger exclaims, The gazes of these characters are directed in the same direction. The man with the eye patch angrily asks who stands before him. From below, the young man with a burning gaze declares that he is the master of the dungeon. Through a narrow opening in the helmet, a fighter's single eye is visible as he charges forward with sword drawn. Another warrior with an eye patch moves to meet him, his large sword raised to strike. The bearded man with the eye patch expresses outrage that he was dared to be attacked so suddenly. His gaze is directed to the side. Then he makes a sound of surprise. Shock is reflected on the face of the character with the eye patch. A sharp sword cuts through the air, creating a powerful blow. The opponent is sent flying backwards, surrounded by a flash. The man with the eye patch stands confidently. He declares that with such a level of skill, he cannot be caught off guard. His opponent, kneeling on one knee, notes that the attempt doesn't seem to have worked. It becomes clear that this is a confrontation with the immense power of an incredibly mighty being. The tall figure notes that upon impact, he realized the vast difference in strength between them. The dark-eyed warrior understands that they simply have to do this. In the next moment, the pumpkin-headed creature declares that it's the opponent's turn. The creature unleashes a powerful blow. The hero throws off his helmet, expressing surprise. The armored opponent sharply falls to the ground. A distinctive sound rings out. The knight tries to get up. He exclaims with a curse, wondering what's happening. The bearded man calls him a coward. Several armed men appear in the forest. The pumpkin-headed creature swings at its opponent. The second warrior steps back. Then, the bearded man with an eye patch sharply turns around with fragments scattering around him. He demands that they get out of his way. He prepares for action. The warrior with the eye patch declares that his sole purpose is to hunt dragons. He continues, explaining that he kills evil dragons and uses their power to hunt other dragons. Then he orders his interlocutor to leave, asserting that he is nobody to him. The swordsman, standing below, raises his blade. The sword swing is aimed at the opponent. The swordsman declares that after what he heard, he cannot miss his target. The man with the eye patch replies that he expected as much. Then he rushes forward, aiming a blow at the opponent, who is sent flying backward. An obstacle appears in the path of the warrior with the eye patch, which he pierces through. The bearded man standing behind says, "Enough." The swordsman, thrown back, says that his speed and strength are not bad. The opponent, bowing his head, adds that it's merely mediocrity at best. Furthermore, he asserts that his opponent lacks experience. The warrior with the eye patch loudly calls out to the young man. The swordsman lands after a powerful blow, with fragments scattering around him. His opponent with the eye patch stands over him, declaring that he is a dungeon master. Then he adds that the swordsman has climbed too high. The warrior with the eye patch is shown. Another character, lying on the ground, exclaims, annoyed, wondering why his body is shaking so much. Then the first asks what is so unusual about this trembling that surprises him so much. The warrior with the eye patch asserts that dragons are creatures who use their power as they please. He wonders how many people have been killed on their whim. Finally, he concludes that his interlocutor, as an adventurer, should understand this. Continuing his monologue, the character states that he still remembers that horror. He recalls how his life was hanging by a thread back then. Two dragons appear. Then he claims that he can no longer see a monster in her. Around her are cute little creatures gathered at a table with food. Suddenly, the hero, lying on the ground, lets out a scream. Smoke billows across the ground with sparks visible above it. Elsewhere, a pointed object rises. The wounded warrior declares that he will protect her, for after all, it is his duty. Then he wonders why his interlocutor is taking such risks. A huge blade descends to the ground, with fragments scattering around. The warrior with the eye patch asserts that in that case his opponent can die for love. He raises his greatsword, preparing to strike. Then he adds that it will happen right now. The hero exclaims with a curse. His sword strike is aimed to the side. He wonders if the opponent has broken through his magical defense. Then a hooded figure appears in the forest, with stains visible on their clothes. A shadow descends from above, followed by a whistle. The hooded warrior gets behind their opponent, raising their blade. A voice notes that it was a good decision to hire him for support. However, he adds that it's daylight robbery, 1 gold coin per shot. A strong expression appears on the face of the one-eyed warrior. Then he exclaims that it's his sword, addressing his opponent. The swordsman prepares for battle, kneeling and gripping the hilt of his sword. The wounded warrior, sword in hand, declares that this is exactly what he planned. He claims it's a dragon-slaying artifact. The man with the eye patch looks on in surprise. He sees his opponent with his back turned, getting ready for action. The opponent with the artifact delivers a powerful blow, piercing the one-eyed warrior. He states that the artifact is super effective against anyone with dragon power. Then the bearded man with the eye patch exclaims in surprise. The wounded warrior continues to strike his opponent. The defeated fighter with the eye patch curses, exclaiming that his opponent is using his own power against him. He cries out in pain, then furiously asks how his opponent dared to do that, letting out a battle cry. The disfigured face of the one-eyed warrior indicates that he is a dragon slayer. He declares that he cannot be defeated. Then he yells for his opponent to do it right now, and the second warrior replies that it's excellent. The opponent, lying on the ground, exclaims about teleportation magic. A magic circle appears on the ground from which pillars of light rise. Then, the three fighters vanish in the glow, their figures dissolving into the air. The swordsman, eyes wide with shock, turns to his opponent, exclaiming that he is now his. A bat silhouette appears behind him. Meanwhile, the one-eyed warrior strikes his opponent. A woman with long hair greets the new fighter. The impact is captured, sending fragments flying everywhere. The woman delivers a powerful kick to the creature. The fighter falls headfirst, surrounded by shattered stones. He flips in midair, then he flies forward, extending his arm. Finally, he lands on the stone floor. The creature, lying on the ground, makes a sound of astonishment, noting that it is so. A winged dragon soars in the sky, its silhouette visible against the bright tones. The warrior, looking up, exclaims that it's beautiful. Barely keeping his balance, the small warrior exclaims that his opponent is a scoundrel and that this happened not many times but just once. Clenching his fists, the chubby man demands that they wait. He states that this time he will ask the royal knight. Several creatures with pointed ears look at him. One of them, with a smile, asks where the gentleman is heading. A woman with pointed ears and horns joyfully raises a mug. She exclaims and declares that they have won. In the next scene, a hooded character with a mug in hand enters a room. Several creatures with pointed ears are gathered around a burning bonfire. A pumpkin-headed creature carries a basket filled with items. The hero sits leaning on his hands, worried about what comes next. A woman with horns and pointed ears notices he's still gloomy despite their victory, saying it's that face again. The hero states that this dragon slayer is a hero of the kingdom. He's concerned that by defeating him, the dungeon might attract unwanted attention. One of the creatures declares that as long as he's the dungeon master, they can handle anything. The hero doesn't interrupt, exclaiming in bewilderment, "How is that even possible?" The woman with pointed ears and horns declares that her companion sacrificed his life to protect her. She then promises to love him forever. She leans towards him and suggests they be together forever. A mischievous expression appears on the long-haired character's face as she exclaims that it's unfair and she wants to be with them too. She asks, "Where am I supposed to go then?" The long-haired creature calls her companion Wade. The little girl utters the word master. Then the hero exclaims with wide eyes. He declares that he's had enough of this immortal nonsense in the dungeon and is returning to the surface. The girl with pointed ears laughs. Her horned companion declares that if anything stands in her way, be it a hero, a kingdom, or even a god, she will crush them all. The hero exclaims and shouts that he's leaving. With his back to the window, a hooded figure says he never thought the dragon slayer could be defeated. There's a large building with sharp spires. Then, a white-haired woman stares intently into the distance. She declares that the time of chaos has arrived. Several days have passed since the battle with the dragon slayer. Suddenly, a fox cried out, leaping high, ready to attack. It struck a large creature, causing a powerful tremor. The horned girl among her comrades expressed indignation that they constantly had to fend off attacks as it was tiring. The fox, addressing him, noted that he whines too much and advised him to rest a bit. Meanwhile, another creature in a dark hood watched the events intently. The hooded man leaned over a fallen figure, regretting that he couldn't defeat the opponent. He realized that one wrong move would have led to defeat. He then turned, looking into the distance, and admitted he had no time to rest. He needed to become stronger. With a determined expression, the hero stated that he now had no right to lose again, no matter what. Meanwhile, a winged woman with horns thoughtfully made a sound, as if remembering something. Wade asked Niui's to hit him with all her might, wanting to test his current abilities. The hooded man with an axe in his hands, standing nearby, watched the scene. The winged creature asked in surprise if he was serious, to which Wade replied affirmatively. She then unleashed a powerful stream of fire that surged forward with immense force. At that moment, the fox, observing the attack, admitted she wasn't thrilled with the idea but couldn't do anything about it. The hooded hero moved swiftly forward, shouting about the superhuman strength of bodies, dodging the streams of fire. Then, he uttered a curse in astonishment when the fox struck him in the leg. Another character watching the scene unfold loudly called out to the master. Dust and debris rose around the hero, indicating a powerful impact. The monster, holding a small creature, exclaimed in surprise that he hadn't succeeded. At that moment, a winged figure asked him what he had been trying to do. Another character who almost revealed himself sat next to him. The man in the hood, looking at his hands, explained that the technique involved creating a magical weapon that would pass through his body. He mentioned it was his partner Sylvia's technique. He added that if done correctly, one could even cut through fire. Meanwhile, the winged figure listened intently. The fox, sitting nearby, asked who this woman was. The hero, sitting on the ground and looking at his hands, explained that the woman was younger than him, but she had taught him how to strengthen his body. He continued, saying she was very energetic and hard to keep up with, but he tried his best. The focus then shifted to a pendant hanging on his chest. The next scene showed the lower body of a woman with a similar pendant, which glowed brightly. The fox smiled as she watched the woman floating in the air deliver a blow. The woman descended rapidly and her magic staff plunged into the ground, causing a powerful explosion. The man, with a worried expression, warned Sylvia that she was taking too many risks and it was dangerous. Sylvia calmly replied that she was fine and they had won. The man, lying on the ground, clarified that these were the consequences of her risky battle and she should have fought more carefully. He then stated that in the future, even the slightest mistake could cost a life. Sylvia exclaimed in surprise upon hearing his words, mentally noting that he really knew a lot about everything. The man, with a worried expression, warned Sylvia that she was taking too many risks and it was dangerous. Sylvia calmly replied that she was fine and they had won. The man, lying on the ground, clarified that these were the consequences of her risky battle and she should have fought more carefully. He then stated that in the future, even the slightest mistake could cost a life. Sylvia exclaimed in surprise upon hearing his words, mentally noting that he really knew a lot about everything. The man, with a serious expression, recalled that she was very feisty, and her strength was beyond what was possible. He pondered how she used a technique that differed from the usual use of magic to create objects. It was a powerful burst of accumulated magic, and she knew how to direct it for an attack. The man, for his part, noted that she explained things rather roughly, so he didn't fully grasp the details, but the essence was clear. The man declared with determination that if he could recreate her technique, he would become much stronger. He then asked those around him to continue training and help him further. The horned monster, holding a small creature, replied that he would gladly help him. However, the winged figure with horns, expressing doubt, wondered if it might be worth considering safer training methods. A woman in a hat appeared, asking about their progress with the golem and stating that she had come to see how they were doing. She then noted that she could see they were continuing their training. Several characters were on the training ground, one of whom was actively training, delivering blows. The winged figure with horns, seeing the newcomer, asked if they wanted to train together. She then turned to the woman in the hat, asking if she might join. The woman in the hat replied that it would be great. The woman in the hat stated that the training golem was an excellent tool. The small creature nearby enthusiastically agreed, saying they liked it and that the golem was conveniently adjustable. She continued, explaining that the golem was created using ancient magical techniques from combat and the archives of various knightly orders. She then added that the golem's body adjusts based on the amount of magical energy it absorbs from its surroundings. The girl in the hat asked if she was the one who set Wade's maximum strength. Nia confirmed that she was. The winged figure with horns noted that he had been too engrossed lately, obsessed with trying to replicate his friend's technique. The woman in the hat listened intently. The winged figure with horns admitted that she wasn't sure if she should say it, but she would anyway. She then revealed that his former partner had been taken into the dungeon. During that time, the squad was attacked and everyone was wiped out. Wade, who miraculously survived, saw the killer. The killer's eyes were like spirals. The winged figure with horns noted that this was the only lead they had. The woman in the hat observed that Wade was consumed by a thirst for revenge. The fox, understanding, spoke of vengeance against the enemy. The winged figure with horns explained that this was why he was striving to escape the dungeon to gain greater power, and also because he risked his life to protect her. She added that she never thought she would be fighting a dragon slayer. At this moment, a warrior with a sword was shown in battle. The woman in the hat agreed. She remarked that it seemed his loyalty hadn't wavered. The winged figure with horns inwardly called him a softie and said she couldn't leave him because he was too cute. A projectile struck the ground with immense force, causing destruction. The fox, worried, asked the master if he was all right, adding that they should stop the training. The master, breathing heavily, replied that he was fine. He declared that he had to overcome his limits as quickly as possible and wanted to finish what he started. The master swiftly attacked the golem, delivering a powerful blow. He flew over it, using his strength. The golem, in turn, counterattacked, sending the master flying back. An explosion raised a cloud of dust, and the golem landed another hit, seemingly striking its target. The woman in the hat thoughtfully stated that Wade wasn't strong enough. Lying on the ground, Wade came to his senses and noted that he was unyielding, and that was enough. Meanwhile, the winged figure with horns mused about his strength, saying he was no stronger than other monsters and his talent was mediocre. However, she acknowledged that he displayed outstanding skills and was a good adventurer, but nothing more. Ultimately, she concluded that this was Wade's essence, a strong spirit and perseverance. Due to his weakness, he tries his absolute best. Every time he falls, he still gets back up. He possesses a soul that cannot be broken. Wade emerged from the rubble, illuminated by lightning, declaring that it was magnificent. The debris around him continued to crumble. The fox asked the master if that was the technique. The master stood amidst the falling stones, replying that no, the magical energy hadn't fully passed yet. Then, with a determined expression, he added that he was already starting to feel it working. Below, a crowd of small creatures cheered him on joyfully. A winged figure with horns asked how she was doing, and the woman in the hat chuckled, admitting she had underestimated him. She added that his experience in the dungeon had given him a lot. The woman in the hat then explained that she was just worried about Wade and that she wasn't against revenge. A part of the dungeon's interior was shown. The woman in the hat then thought they should hurry as they had already decided on the dungeon's successor. Meanwhile, small creatures gathered around her, bustling with joy. A woman with long hair and glasses, standing in the hall, smirked ominously. She greeted the man with an axe and the small creature who appeared. The woman addressed him, hoping he was watching this recording now. The man with the axe and the small creatures nearby exclaimed in astonishment. The long-haired woman, responding to something, said it was wonderful, Miss Lemmy. At this moment, another small winged creature appeared. The long-haired woman folded her hands. Then she suggested they begin negotiations. She addressed those present, calling them gentlemen of the dragon dungeon. The fox exclaimed in surprise while the woman in the hat watched intently. She continued, saying it was a pleasure to meet them. The man with scars on his face, the horned monster, and the small creatures also listened carefully. The woman with long hair and glasses, smiling, addressed those present with a request. She explained that she wanted them to hand over control of the dungeon to her. A man with a short haircut stood next to her. The woman with long hair and glasses, sitting in a chair, repeated that she wanted them to hand over control of the dungeon to her. In response, the man with the axe and the horned monster stared at her. The woman with long hair and glasses, smiling slightly, said she was a little late. She introduced herself, stating that her name was Dungeon Lady Lemmy. Lemmy, with a smile, asked who their main master was. The winged figure with horns indignantly exclaimed that it was a magical projector and their attacks wouldn't do anything. Lemmy raised her hand. Then the man with the axe, with a surprised expression, replied that it was him. Lemmy apologized, as she simply didn't expect a mortal to become a dragon master. The winged figure with horns, seeing his reaction, asked if he had any questions and irritably added that he looked very pale. Lemmy, sitting in the chair, suggested resolving everything peacefully, adding that she had a reasonable counteroffer. She promised that when they handed over power to her, they would receive as many artifacts as they wanted, as well as guaranteed food and other resources. The man with the axe looked at her with disbelief, while the fox looked wary. The woman in the hat focused on the resources. Lemmy, smiling, asked, "Well then," the man with the axe thoughtfully said, and then added that there was no reason to refuse. Lemmy considered it a good offer. Lemmy, smiling, remarked that it was quite a serious deal. The man with the axe, approaching closer, asked why she needed this dungeon. Lemmy replied that she was a researcher, fascinated by dungeons and their inner workings. The man with the axe, surrounded by other creatures, wondered in confusion if there was some kind of trick here. Lemmy, with an even wider smile, added that the more samples, the better. She smiled and asked, for example, about skill development within the dungeon, or perhaps the goblins here were highly intelligent, weren't they? She also added that ultimately she needed more in terms of both quantity and quality. The horned monster and the smaller creatures looked puzzled. Lemmy noted that if there were differences in the monsters, she wanted to dissect and study them. The man with the axe firmly declared that he was interrupting her and they wouldn't give her the dungeon. Then, with force, he slammed his palm and something glowing appeared in the air. Lemmy, sitting in her chair, waved her hand and her guard, Eliza, holding a small creature, announced that she would pick her up later. Lemmy wished them a good time. The winged, horned figure chuckled, then exclaimed. She added that he was still the dungeon master, no matter what. Meanwhile, Wade, thrown back by the impact, tried to get up, yelling for them to leave him alone. Eliza replied, telling him not to worry maybe. Lemmy, still in her chair, waved goodbye. Eliza, holding a small creature, said she would pick her up later. Lemmy wished them a good time. Nia chuckled, then exclaimed. She added that he was still the dungeon master, no matter what. Meanwhile, Wade, thrown back by the impact, tried to get up, yelling for them to leave him alone. The fox declared with determination that they would manage. The woman in the hat was also nearby. Meanwhile, Wade exclaimed that they should let him go as they were under attack. Below, the man with the axe shouted that he promised. Then a shadow appeared and acknowledged that they had decided to escape there. A small hooded creature quickly vanished into the darkness, which resembled a funnel. One of the opponents said, then remembered that Elise had told Lemmy not to kill everyone. Eliza stood in a circle of her golems. The horned man, the fox, and the woman in the hat were on high alert. The horned monster, holding a small creature, concluded that it didn't matter what world they were in as long as they were alive. A warrior with a heavy weapon is visible, followed by other, smaller creatures all in motion, clearly preparing for an attack. The woman in the hat dodges a blow, while Eliza, with a thoughtful expression, says that although she really wanted dragon blood, she would have to settle for them guys. When they heard that, they realized she was a vampire. The sorceress in the wide-brimmed hat realized the need to use enhanced magic to overcome the current situation. For this, she said she would need some time to prepare. The sharp-eared girl in glasses seemed to understand, expressing her agreement. Suddenly, powerful shockwaves emanate from the appearing warrior, spreading outwards. One of the waves throws the character in black clothing, sending him flying. In another shot, a girl with long blonde hair and a sword in her hand prepares to parry an attack. Eliza makes a swift lunge, cutting through the space in front of her. Her movement is accompanied by a powerful blow that shakes the surrounding area. The pale-haired swordswoman, observing what is happening, holds her blade ready, showing complete concentration. She delivers a powerful blow, piercing the space in front of her. The opponent, clad in armor and holding a shield, retreats under the pressure. The dark-haired fighter, previously thrown back, is now on his feet, showing that his weapon has changed. The girl with the ears wonders about the unusual transformation. The girl with long blonde hair holding a sword looks surprised, noticing the changes in the opponent's weapon. The dark-haired character, smiling slightly, explains that this is a method for fighting vampires. His left hand is enveloped in a dark, writhing substance. The sorceress in the wide-brimmed hat realized the need to use enhanced magic to overcome the current situation, noting that she would need some time to prepare. The sharp-eared girl in glasses expressed her understanding, confirming that she agreed with this. Suddenly, powerful shockwaves emanate from Eliza, spreading outwards. One of the waves throws the character in black clothing, sending him flying. In another shot, a girl with long blonde hair and a sword in her hand prepares to parry an attack. Eliza makes a swift lunge, cutting through the space in front of her, her movement accompanied by a powerful blow that shakes the surrounding area. The pale-haired swordswoman, observing what is happening, holds her blade ready, showing complete concentration. Eliza attacks, unleashing a barrage of arrows that fly towards the target. The arrows fly directly at the opponent, who holds a shield, and he tries to block them. Another character nearby also deflects arrows, trying to protect himself from the hail of attacks. The sharp-eared girl, dodging the arrows, tries with effort to protect her teacher. She expresses concern about how fast Eliza is moving, and admits that she herself finds it difficult to even move. The armored girl landed, calling out for someone to promise. A gloved hand gripped the sword hilt tightly, and a voice from behind urged Sunny not to be a wimp. A young woman, wide-eyed, pondered that she needed to collect her thoughts and make a decision, noting that this was all she could do at the moment. Another figure remarked that she seemed to be counting on victory in the upcoming battle, and with a sigh, wished her good luck. Meanwhile, the armored warrior was already charging forward. The character in dark clothing expressed surprise at their opponent's speed, their eyes wide open. The figure in the foreground raised a leg to strike, and the armored warrior lunged with a sword, declaring it was for the master. The light-haired hero looked down, admitting they hadn't had time to prepare their weapon. The warrior with elven ears bowed their head, acknowledging they had underestimated their opponent. Then blood spurted from their cheek, indicating a hit. The armored figure fired a pistol, their gaze focused, but the shot missed its target. The girl lay on the ground, admitting she had failed. Meanwhile, another character ascended to a higher position. The person standing over the defeated opponent stated that they had forced them to use their inner power, and the girl let out a scream, followed by the sound of footsteps. The student, wide-eyed, exclaimed her teacher's name. At the same time, the witch in the hat sat surrounded by a magic circle, while another character stood opposite, declaring they didn't know what kind of magic it was, but the witch still hadn't succeeded. One of the characters noted that the other heroine looked like a child externally, then said that his interest in her blood wasn't about the mission, he just wanted to taste it. Meanwhile, the witch stared in surprise at the approaching elf, who whispered something in her ear. In response, the witch uttered a curse, calling the creature a blood healer, her eyes wide open. One of the characters noted that another heroine looked like a child, then added that his interest in her blood wasn't about the mission, he just wanted to taste it. Meanwhile, the witch stared in surprise at the approaching elf, who whispered something in her ear. In response, the witch cursed, calling the creature a blood healer, her eyes wide with shock. The blonde character stated that the witch claimed she needed dragon blood. He went on to explain that blood is an excellent means of protection, especially for vampires, and therefore she might want his rare blood. Meanwhile, the witch smirked, noting that she needed to stop her opponent by any means necessary. The suspended figure declared that they were cunning and used blood restrictions. The witch then mentioned that they also wanted living samples, just like their enemies. The character in the jacket exclaimed in surprise and demanded they wait when the witch expressed her intention to take his vampire blood. The witch smiled, adding that a sturdy syringe would be perfect for the job. The young mage in the hat thanked them for their help, then awkwardly admitted that he had lost. The witch declared that she had cornered and destroyed her opponent, expressing surprise as to why their enemy was praising them. Meanwhile, the green-haired girl named Sunny smiled at the witch, who told her she did a good job because she had completed her task. Sunny replied that it was a great honor for her. Two goblin men and other creatures expressed their joy, while the witch in the hat mused that the others should also be praised, as their work was now finished. She then pondered the current situation. Wade, Dolt, Sunny, and their companion appeared. Two opposing teams appear in the arena. The first team consists of a short-haired girl with wings, and a young man stands beside her. The second team has a brunette in glasses and a small flying creature hovering next to her. The participants take their positions, preparing for the battle to begin in the dungeon. The young man reflects on his condition, noting that his body feels fine. The winged girl informs him that movement between dungeons is unrestricted, but the structure itself protects its master. The brunette in glasses mockingly asks if this is their first time in someone else's dungeon and suggests they surrender. The young man replies that there will be no negotiations. The girl calls out to Wade, clarifying that they won't be able to use the dungeon's powers. The winged girl explains to Wade that in this place he won't be able to heal or use enhancements. She asks him to trust her and take cover, adding that he'll have a job to do later. Suddenly, the small flying creature shouts an objection. It flies over to Wade and touches his back between his wings as if using some ability. The small creature traps the winged girl in a transparent sphere, suspended in the air. It smugly declares that it shouldn't be underestimated. The girl calls it a winged beetle. Wade is surprised, wondering when it managed to block her. The brunette laughs and says it's a special seal made just for them. She addresses Wade, reminding him that his ally is captured and threatens new attacks on the dungeon. Wade declares that he still wants to fight. The girl in the magic sphere sadly utters his name. The brunette scoffs, saying she loves fools who don't know their place, they die quickly. She thinks to herself that she doesn't want to torment him unnecessarily, considering herself principled. Then she promises to tell him something interesting, a win-win situation. A master can gain control over another dungeon by touching its core. He assumes the lizard brought the rivals here for that very purpose. The conditions are the same for everyone, and he doesn't need any agreements. All that's required is to find and touch the core. He notes that it sounds quite simple. The brunette replies that she'll destroy them first, then deal with the dungeon. Wade approaches the brunette, holding a spear-like weapon. She steps back, admitting she doesn't like to move much, so she prefers to use her ability. A mana cube appears in her hand, which she calls her masterpiece. Sounds begin to echo around them, followed by several loud ones accompanying the activation of her ability. They are transported to a space completely filled with cubes. The brunette sits on a throne assembled from the same cubes. Wade feels lost in this environment. There's no ground beneath his feet and he seems to float in the air. He exclaims in shock. The brunette, calmly spinning one of the cubes in her fingers, states that her specialization is creating golems. The brunette explains that the artifact was originally an ordinary metal object with the ability to multiply. She altered its structure and transformed it into a swarm golem. Wade realizes with surprise that they are inside this construct. He remarks that dungeons indeed have many traps, hinting at the complexity of their situation. The brunette says the golem can attack and defend at will. She scoffs, asking if it's too complicated for an ordinary person of flesh and blood. Then she explains that the mana cube can read her thoughts and is controlled directly by her mind. Wade cries out in tension. At that moment, one of the cubes suddenly strikes her chin. A series of cubes erupts, flies up, and powerfully strikes Wade in the jaw. He recoils from the blow. The brunette, observing, remarks that it probably hurt. She adds that despite her own immortality, such blows are indeed felt and cause pain. Wade begins to move through the space, leaping from one cube to another, spear in hand. The winged girl calls his name. The brunette watches his actions and notes that he's quite resilient for a normal human, especially with the enhancement. She acknowledges his stubbornness, but assumes he probably broke several bones in the process. The brunette looks at Wade with an empty gaze and muses that a lack of fear of pain is a sign of illness. She wonders if he's gone mad from immortality in the dungeon. Then she confidently declares that he will die soon and should beg for mercy. After that, she raises her index finger and the cubes begin to connect, forming one enormous cube. The brunette tells Wade that his grave is already waiting. At that moment, the enormous cube begins to change, taking on a new form. Its structure becomes smoother and more cohesive, as if the forces within it have merged. The winged girl, trapped in the magic sphere, anxiously cries out his name. The small boy, frightened, scrambles up onto the surface of the sphere. The winged girl, trapped, desperately shouts for Wade to run. However, he freezes in place, not rushing to retreat. He begins to ponder, suspecting there's some trick behind what's happening. In his thoughts, he tries to understand the cunning of this technique and doesn't rush to act rashly. Wade recalls a conversation with a girl. He hesitantly says he wants to help her more. She replies that he doesn't need to imitate her technique as he's always by her side anyway. Then, smiling, she promises to show him everything she knows. She adds that he might turn into a grandpa before mastering all the techniques. In the flashback, the girl smiles and says she'll train with Wade even when he's old. Then she laughs and adds that she was joking. In the present, the memory clearly affects Wade. His gaze changes, and determination and confidence appear in his eyes for the upcoming fight. Wade distinctly remembers the girl's words from the past. She taught him to first let magic flow through his body. That, she said, is where true magic begins. She explained that precise energy manipulation is crucial. He needs to gather maximum magic in his weapon and release it all at once. Following these instructions, Wade charges forward with immense force like a bullet. His opponent watches in surprise. In Wade's mind, the girl's voice from the memory whispers in his ear that she's already come up with a name for this technique. He responds with surprise, not understanding what's happening. She playfully asks if the name isn't beautiful. She calls the technique Okui's magic blade style, Flame Tail. At that moment, Wade slices through it, cutting it in half. The world created from cubes, previously called the cubic realm, begins to crumble. The entire space where the battle took place gradually disappears. Wade remains standing opposite the brunette. In the room, where everything was built from cubes, one wall remained unmoved. She says that there must be something important behind it, something he wants to protect. Wade says that everyone hides their treasures where they'll be best protected. He claims the core is indeed here and declares they've won this fight. After saying this, he approaches the shimmering core that appeared before him and reaches out to complete the capture. Lemmy is outraged by how they're being treated. She asks if they're ready to continue participating and notes that they don't know much about dungeons. Wade replies that even if she were the only expert, he wouldn't listen to her. Lemmy says he's either an idiot or a genius. Dungeons are incredibly valuable, and many influential people want to claim this place. Lemmy states that she isn't the only dungeon master looking to expand her influence. Wars over dungeons have been fought since ancient times. These places bring profit, and profit creates demand. Now they've become part of these conflicts too. It makes you wonder what awaits Wade, who decided to participate in these wars. The small winged creature assembles a structure from strange figures which transforms into a portal. He explains that it's a passage connecting to other dungeons. Finishing his work, he announces that everything is ready. The little one says the portal is very convenient. It can be used to enter a dungeon that previously belonged to Lemmy. He reminds them this has already been explained. The winged girl adds that Lemmy will be busy for a while now. She also notes that Lemmy and the bespectacled girl were so excited they were speaking in technical jargon. In the end, she apologizes, admitting she didn't understand anything. The hardest part will be with Wade. Managing 2 dungeons at once is difficult. She then begins to explain the physical properties of her dungeon. Wade reacts with disbelief, but she suggests leaving it to her and declares they can become allies. Lemmy says she had topics to discuss with that witch. As part of their cooperation, she expresses a desire to study Wade's dungeon and admits she really likes the idea. She then adds that she became curious, and that's why she decided to team up with him. Finally, she asks what his ultimate goal is in the dungeon wars. According to Dolta, influential players from all over the world are fighting for territories. A more thorough study of literature revealed records dating back to ancient times, and their analysis showed that battles have become particularly active recently. These are the dungeon wars. With 2 dungeons in her possession, she becomes a good target for others. She needs the knowledge of that bespectacled girl to compete with the rest. If she had a good ally, she would give up her status as master of this dungeon. But why are they all so? Lemmy asked if they had plans to replenish their forces, as it would be useful in the future. She reminded them that their enemies lost even to goblins, and while Eliza and the golems are recovering, they cannot be given orders. One of the girls reminded her of someone. Lemmy emphasized that fighting organized opponents would require experienced people capable of acting independently and taking responsibility without constant supervision. He recalled a conversation with Sasha, his childhood friend. Back then, she said she wanted to become a court knight because they were the kingdom's elite, and she refused his plea to abandon everything. They had a fight. Now alone again, those words echo in his memory. He realizes he might have to fight alone without support. He doesn't want to think about it, but the past resurfaces. He remembers Sasha urging him not to leave. She reminded him that he wanted to travel and said she wanted to go with him. But she herself dreamed of becoming a court knight. Her talent was already recognized. She didn't understand why he would give up such an opportunity. This conversation stayed with him for a long time, as that's when they chose different paths and a chasm opened between them. He remembers Sasha urging him to stay when he was about to leave. Because of the war and famine, he felt like a burden to the village, being an orphan unable to work. He believed that by leaving, he would give others a chance to survive. But she was angry, reminding him that he always dreamed of becoming a strong knight and protecting the village. He, however, wanted to repay the people's kindness by sacrificing himself. He leaves his sword as a farewell gift, saying it's for good luck in her career. She replies that she's not happy to receive it from him. He apologizes, but she screams that she doesn't want to see him anymore. In tears, in despair, she calls him an idiot, unable to hold back her hurt and pain. Lemmy, with a slight smile, recalls that she's probably beautiful now. She giggles, admitting the memory was a bit tearful, but she thought about the future then, and their paths diverged. He heard her name when he was in King's Landing. They haven't seen each other since. Now she is fair, beautiful, one of the best court knights in the capital. 2 fighters battle one-on-one in a training arena. One is an adult Sasha in court knight armor, focused and confident. The second is a man in full knight's gear. As he charges with a shout, Sasha turns at the last moment and swiftly delivers a counterattack. Her opponent barely manages to dodge, avoiding injury, but the fight is already decided. Sasha emerges victorious. Sasha pulls the hand of the knight lying on the ground and asks if he can stand up. He replies affirmatively. The surrounding observers, seeing the sparring conclude, announce that the session is over, ask everyone to relax, and thank them for their guidance. Sasha walks down a bustling city street. She has long white hair braided into pigtails. Passers-by respectfully whisper. They recognize her as Sasha, the strong knight. They say even Saint Sophia cares for her, admiring her achievements. At this moment, she notices 2 children playing nearby, and a memory of her playing with Wade resurfaces. Sasha pulls out her sword, the very one Wade once gave her for good luck in her career. His words flash in her memory. She grips the hilt, looks at the sky, and thinks that she lost touch with him, regretting that she never apologized. Her voice in her head sounds clear. Wade, how are you now? And she enters the realm, announcing her arrival. Before her is Lady Sophia, a tall and confident woman with dark skin wearing a light, bright robe. She stands calmly, reserved, having just taken a bath. The girl tries to say something but stumbles over her words. Sophia calmly remarks that she asked her to come in. Sasha nods awkwardly and takes a step forward. They sit in a luxurious room at a table with only 2 chairs facing each other. Sophia offers her a cup with a drink and calmly says, "Please." Sasha declines, slightly embarrassed. She apologizes for interrupting her, but Sasha assures her that it's fine. Then she adds that she has something important for her. Sasha curiously asks what it is. Sophia explains that this place is in a remote area that she believes hasn't been properly explored yet. Rumor has it that Brad, the dragon slayer, went there and challenged its inhabitants but was defeated. Perhaps his pride was wounded, which is why he's currently training. She says that despite wanting to celebrate their survival, something more important looms. She asks Sasha if she's heard of the Dragon Dungeon, which is connected to that very hero slayer. Sophia mentions that dragons guard their territory, and and there are dungeons full of these creatures where even Brad can't compare to them. It's believed that due to their incredible strength, dragons aren't interested in governance. However, the stronger the surrounding magic, the more demons appear and their power also increases. The more powerful the dungeon king, the stronger the magic within. If a dragon's dungeon becomes overrun with demons, she starts to worry about what might happen next. Sasha decides to scout the dungeon despite the danger. She's confident that the fewer scouts there are, the higher their chances of remaining undetected, because if the dragons sense a threat, everything could end in disaster. But she wants to alleviate Lady Sophia's fears and considers it her duty to act. Therefore, without hesitation, she firmly resolves to go, despite the risk. Sophia approaches her closely, gently takes her face in her palm, and leaning in close to her ear, whispers words of gratitude almost inaudibly, asking her to return alive. Her voice is soft but firm. "Oh, dear Sasha, thank you, and please, be sure to come back." Sasha, blushing and flustered by the sudden closeness, sharply recoiled, stumbled, cried out, and as if to hide her awkwardness, hastily ran towards the exit, loudly exclaiming that she was leaving immediately. When she reached the location, Sasha paused before the entrance, took a deep breath, and with firm conviction declared that this was indeed the dragon dungeon. She promised Lady Sophia that she would return with good news, and guided by her feelings, she resolutely stepped forward to dispel her fears. A small winged creature named Dolta appears before her after being summoned. Sasha immediately tells her that she summoned her because she needs help. Dolta is surprised but replies that if she can help with anything, Sasha should tell her. The girl then leans in and asks her to teach her how to make Wade fall madly in love with her. The determined girl confesses to Dolta that she wants Wade to desire her. Her heart rejoices when she watches him wholeheartedly strive for his goal. It fills her with admiration. But unfortunately, his nature is comparable to a wild beast. Dolta smirks and agrees to help, jokingly asking if Sasha will show her the eggs when she has them. She assures Sasha that an ordinary person wouldn't be able to handle such a thing, but the current Wade is even capable of resurrection. After these words, she hands over a vial containing a concentrated dragon slime extract, guaranteeing 3 days of pleasure from just one drop. The girl smiles and says that curiosity is paramount. The small creature admires her unscrupulousness and joyfully exclaims that she didn't make a mistake in choosing an ally. At that moment, Sasha enters the same place where they were talking, and their gazes meet. Sasha stands alone, and someone noticing her expresses surprise that a court knight is here unescorted. He recalls seeing her before at a magic item shop and is now pleased by the unexpected encounter. He approaches closer and greets her, surprised that she might know someone present. The atmosphere becomes lively as a new adventurer has appeared. Sasha notices she's next to Dolta, but something feels off. Her behavior is suspicious and she looks human. However, the magical aura emanating from her leaves no doubt. This is the very dragon from the labyrinth. Lady Sophia's words echo in her mind, warning that if the monster breaks free, everything could end in disaster. Sasha feels a surge of anxiety and remembers Sophia's parting words, and be sure to come back. She realizes she must destroy the dragon despite its deceptive appearance. If anyone stands with it, even Dolta, she'll have to fight them too. For Lady Sophia's sake, she won't back down. With these thoughts, she draws her sword, takes a combat stance, and prepares for the confrontation. Wade says with relief that the patrol is complete, but suddenly notices something strange. He exclaims in surprise, spotting an uninvited guest. Dolta explains that she asked them not to kill the knight who had gone too far. Despite everything, she held back and instead punched her, deciding she'd have to calm the uninvited visitor down a bit. Wade freezes when he recognizes Sasha, the court knight, lying on the ground. He asks them to wait, noting that even now, if she wakes up, she might attack again. They explain that she suddenly attacked them as if disoriented. Wade says they grew up together and asks what happened to her. Her weapon has already been taken, but he still doesn't understand why she acted that way and asks if anyone knows what's wrong with her. Sasha regains consciousness, slowly opens her eyes and struggles to sit up, looking around and asking where she is. Wade approaches, leans down and gently says her name, trying to make sure she's okay. He asks if she remembers him, saying it's him, Wade. Sasha repeats his name in surprise and recognizing him, quickly rushes to him and hugs him tightly. Wade recoils in alarm and exclaims for Sasha to stop, accidentally yelping in surprise. At that moment, the girl who has a crush on him sharply approaches and, angered, digs her nails between them right into the space of their embrace, as if trying to physically separate them. Due to the force and dirt on the ground, her movement leaves scratches even on the floor, and she angrily shouts about what they're doing in the middle of the base. When asked what that was, she tries to justify herself, saying she was just with her. Wade turns to Sasha, asking if she's alright. Sasha replies that she's fine. Then she clarifies if anyone is forcing her to obey the dragon. Wade says no, although the dragon is fierce, it's their ally. The girl says Sasha is as sturdy as a rock. The small creature adds that she constantly reinforces her body with defensive magic, as befits a court knight. Due to exhaustion from exploring the labyrinth, Sasha lashed out at them. She thought they were enemies and reacted reflexively. Dolta says they appeared to be enemies, but she shouldn't have confused them. Perhaps she was under some influence. Sasha isn't the type to attack her own. Wade says he heard everything and they'll have to figure it out to keep everyone safe. The court knight stands next to the brunette, who says to leave it to her. She's confident that analysis is her specialty. She expresses surprise when she remembers that this is the same court knight. Wade warns against any tricks and promises to check Sasha for traces of magic. They are both ready for this, knowing that the methods are reliable and everything should go quickly. The brunette in glasses calmly gives commands. If you're ready to cooperate, repeat after me. Sasha, a little bewildered, repeats after her. I'm opening up, you're not enemies, I'm lowering my weapon. At that moment, the brunette raises her index finger, traces it through the air, and glowing lines begin to appear. They connect into patterns, forming a magic circle that pulsates with a faint light. Suddenly, someone appeared behind him, grabbed his arms tightly, and lifted them up, holding him effortlessly. Only the armor, she said doubtfully, not letting go. He exclaimed, surprised by her actions, but she calmly explained that the disarming magic only worked on metal. If he had protective magic on him, it would have messed up the analysis. The brunette adjusted her glasses and looked at the magic circle, which was slowly disappearing into the air. She narrowed her eyes in thought. Then she turned to the others and said that she saw no signs of magical control. Although there are demons in the world capable of influencing consciousness without using magic, there were no traces of brainwashing here. At least in a magical sense, she was sure everything was clear. Sasha suddenly jumped up, her voice filled with resentment and anger, shouting that she wasn't under control and demanding they stop. One of the girls, with a cheeky smirk, doubted her words, which only angered Sasha more. She was about to lunge, but Wade intervened, asking her to calm down. The brunette with the circle confirmed that there were no problems visible yet and no magical influence, but she added that they should still keep an eye on Sasha, just in case. Wade offered to show them around, mentioning that they were cooperating with the goblins. In response, the goblins cheerfully reported that they were trying their best. He showed them how they worked in the field, explaining the processes. Sasha, looking around, murmured in surprise that she couldn't believe her eyes. One of the goblins suddenly recognized her and loudly exclaimed her name. One of the goblins recognized Sasha and exclaimed in surprise, calling her the Count of the Seventh Light. He asked why she was there. Sasha calmly replied that the locals, though considered savages, turned out to be good people and gave her a chance to try her hand at agriculture. She pointed to one of the goblins, saying he had bothered her at first. The others were surprised to learn that she was living happily there. The goblins were discussing the guy, saying that the world had been cruel to him and that he had no aristocratic talent. However, another goblin objected, saying he had extensive knowledge, and even the goblins acknowledged it. Sasha added that he was her childhood friend. Someone immediately asked who she was to the master. The guy, hearing this, started acting loudly, assuring everyone that she had come to save him. One goblin yelled at him to get back to work. Another remarked that it was another madhouse starting. It all ended with a joke about competition. Sasha, looking around, admitted that the place was quite lively and apologized for her outburst. Then, lowering her eyes, she added that 13.5 years had passed since their last meeting. Wade was surprised and noted that indeed a lot had changed. She said she had worked hard to reach his level. He chuckled and replied that she hadn't changed. A warm nostalgia hung in the air and both fell silent for a moment, remembering the past. Sasha quietly said that he had decided to go on a journey himself, and she felt like she was left behind. Wade turned to her and she continued that it was in childhood and he acted in the heat of the moment. Although he thought of her, she still felt abandoned. Wade looked down and admitted that she had always been better than him. He added that he was truly sorry that everything had happened that way back then. A silence filled with regret and unspoken feelings hung between them. Wade, looking down, said that he also regretted being so harsh with her, and then hopefully asked if it was too late to start over. Sasha confidently replied that of course it wasn't too late. They were silent for a few seconds, and then he, without taking his eyes off her, extended his hand. Sasha didn't hesitate, responding in kind, and their fingers intertwined. While Sasha and Wade talked, shared memories, and genuinely reconnected, two others watched them stealthily, a girl who had feelings for Wade and her small companion. Neither missed how warm and easy things had become between the former friends. The girl clenched her fists, holding back her irritation, and the creature beside her let out a barely audible snort. Meanwhile, Sasha, turning to Wade with a slight smile, said, "By the way, Wade." Sasha asked why he lived in a dungeon. Wade hesitated a bit and replied that a lot had happened, and now he had become the dungeon master. After these words, the girl froze, realizing that her original goal was precisely connected to the master. He admitted that he was in a difficult position and was currently trying to find someone to whom he could transfer this position. The words that he was the dungeon master clearly shocked her. Sasha, hearing the question, sighed and replied that she was there at someone's request. She had been sent to investigate a dragon dungeon that could threaten the kingdom. She confessed that she wanted to stop it, but deep down, she was afraid of upsetting someone dear to her. She didn't want that person to hate her. The last words were filled with inner pain and tenderness. "Ah, sweet Sasha." Sasha, covering her face with her hands, barely whispered the last words, her voice trembling as she held back tears. Wade, alarmed by her state, reached closer and exclaimed, "What happened?" but at that moment, unexpectedly, the dagger she had been hiding suddenly pierced his body. When the dagger blade plunged into Wade's body, he froze in bewilderment, not immediately understanding what had happened. His eyes widened in shock, his breath caught, and he barely whispered, "What is this? Why?" At that same moment, the girl who had been watching all this rushed forward in anger, decisively pushed Sasha aside and stood between her and the wounded man, shielding Wade. While Sasha tried to regain her composure, the small creature, without losing a second, darted towards her and skillfully wrapped her in magical ribbons, paralyzing her movements. The girl who had stepped in to protect Wade knelt beside him, supporting his body, which was beginning to go limp. His gaze was clouded, his breathing was ragged, and blood soaked his clothes. The last thing he saw before consciousness faded was her face, contorted with anxiety, and her lips uttering his name. Wade struggled to sit up, holding his wound, while someone nearby explained that it took about 2 minutes to recover from such a blow. He asked how long he had been unconscious, nodded, and promised to be more careful. His attention was drawn to Sasha, who was standing aside and shouting for people not to approach her. She declared that the people nearby made her uneasy, but as soon as she noticed him, she immediately rushed over to check on him. The girl hugged him tightly, looking intently into his eyes and asking if he was really okay. With anxiety in her voice, she suggested that he might have been under the influence of magic. Smiling faintly, she added that she had already beaten up all the bad guys. Sasha was now wearing a memory suppression collar, a temporary measure to keep everyone safe. Wade, still not fully understanding what was happening, asked what exactly she had done and what was going on. The brunette coldly explained that Sasha's mind was not under magical control. This meant that the subjugation had occurred in a different, far more frightening way. According to her, whoever was behind it had used something akin to hypnosis, a method capable of distorting a person's words and actions. She added that removing the effect was possible, and that was why Sasha was wearing the memory suppression collar. This artifact returned the girl's mind to its state before the brainwashing began, completely sealing away memories of the last few decades. Wade nodded reservedly, looking at Sasha, whose eyes reflected complete bewilderment. He felt sorry for her, of course, but Lemmy's decision truly seemed to be the best one for now. He thanked the brunette for the explanation and admitted that without this intervention, things could have ended much worse. Lemmy, despite her cold rationality, also showed patience. Wade acknowledged that the situation remained fragile. The collar was only a temporary measure, and to fully free herself from the suggestion, Sasha would have to overcome the internal chains of control on her own. The person who sent Sasha into the dungeon did so with a specific goal in mind. Most likely they are behind her current condition. It's improbable that her appearance here is a mere coincidence. Everything points to a pre-planned operation. Court knight found deep within the labyrinth was clearly following someone's orders or fell under someone's influence. Lemmy listened carefully and agreed. Everything was forming a disturbing, yet logical, picture. Suspicions are narrowing, and it's now clear that the culprit is in the castle. Court knights answer to the king and are often in the capital. One of the heroes suggests looking for them in the city and questioning them. Lemmy is surprised by Wade's initiative, but agrees that information is valuable. She recalls that if non-magical suggestion is possible, close contact is needed. And knights, as everyone knows, often appear among the local residents. The heroes discuss their plan of action. Now it's their turn to act. One of them can't leave the labyrinth, but agrees that catching the culprit will help them move forward. They decide to use their connections with the Adventurers Guild to gather information. Someone suggests infiltrating the castle disguised as merchants. Eliza, who has scouting skills, volunteers to help. Another volunteer is ready to act. Everyone is prepared to put in the effort for their common goal. Suddenly, an unknown man approached the group and enthusiastically declared that he had accidentally overheard their conversation. He introduced himself as a count and offered his help, claiming that with him, they would have 100 entry points into the castle. One of the participants noted that connections with aristocrats could be useful. Another doubted the plan's success, but agreed that it would give them a better chance to meet the right people. The count, however, secretly decided to escape at the first opportunity and vowed to imprison all traitors. Wade escorted the group to the labyrinth's exit and, stopping, said it was time to move forward. He wished them luck and reminded them that the enemy was dangerous, possessing the art of suggestion. Despite the risk, he believed in their success and asked them to return alive. As he was about to turn back, Sasha unexpectedly hugged him from behind, calling his name as if she didn't want to let him go. Sasha enthusiastically suggested that Wade go exploring, her eyes shining with interest. He asked in surprise, not expecting such an impulse. The girl next to her smiled in approval, let him go. Wade sighed lightly, remarking that it seemed he had become her temporary babysitter, to which she cheerfully agreed. Then, as if in passing, Sasha asked if it was true that he now lived in the labyrinth, since the hat-wearing one had already told her everything. Sasha asked why he hadn't returned yet, suggesting they go to the village together. Wade admitted that he used to only think about escape and revenge, but never about returning home. He said that he was grateful to that village back then, but didn't feel it was his true home. However, now looking at her, he added that he would try his best so they could return together. Wade confessed that he could never shake the feeling of being an outsider in that village, which is why he left. The first place he could truly call home was the orphanage, a refuge for those in difficult situations who hadn't found their place elsewhere in the world. At that moment in his memories, Sylvia joyfully interrupted the conversation, boasting about her catch, and her companion nearby called out to her, asking her to behave properly. During the conversation, Wade was reminded that he should think about his behavior. In response, Keen flared up, unwilling to listen to lectures. An argument erupted, and he threateningly declared that he would explain everything with his fists. Someone nearby chuckled, comparing them to children. Mabris intervened, also calling them children, and then threatened that if they didn't hurry, she would eat all of Gauze's signature Firebird soup herself. Gauze carefully examined the dungeon and said, "This looks complicated." And it really is. To put it simply, there are too many layers of magic stacked on top of each other here. Then he looked at a strange magic book. "What kind of book did you find today? It doesn't quite fit into my plans. It can't be overridden by other magic. Perhaps it once belonged to healers, so it's useless in combat. Well, onward to adventure." The more complex the dungeons, the closer we are to dangerous ancient magic. The lecture started again, even though they were counting on him and asked him to be careful. Someone irritably asked how many more moms there were here. Wade apologized, but in the present moment, he was told that his bag was glowing. He pondered, trying to understand what was happening. The bag shone brightly, emitting a beautiful light. Sasha asked in surprise what it was. She was told it was an artifact that points to something lost, as if it helps find lost items or paths. At this time, thick black goo began to drip from the cave ceiling. The drops became stronger and thicker, as if something was about to appear. A guy in black slid down and appeared from the cave ceiling, his clothes seemingly covered in the same black goo. He looked straight ahead, as if he had noticed someone important. Wade suddenly realized and remembered the moment when everyone around him was killed, and he remained the sole witness. He saw that guy leave, leaving only destruction and darkness in his wake. Sasha heard a scream and felt her heart pounding wildly. Fear gripped her, but she knew she had to run to escape at all costs. That terrible day, which he would never forget, flashed in his memory. Sasha's voice was nearby, but his gaze was fixed on those cold, piercing eyes. Wade's eyes burned with the fire of rage and pain, his body tensed, ready for a fight, because that guy was the reason for his comrades' deaths. The enemy stood motionless before him, eyes devoid of emotion, like a cold abyss that couldn't be penetrated. In that moment, time seemed to stop, and only the feeling of revenge filled the space between them. Wade aimed his spears at the stranger and said he had been looking for him for a long time. He asked if the stranger remembered appearing with a shadow that day. Wade's eyes held anger and vengeance, while his opponent's gaze remained empty. Wade remembered his fallen comrades. They were true adventurers, ready to face the dangers of the dungeon. Each of them knew what they were getting into and accepted it, but despite the conscious risk, he couldn't forgive the one who took his friends from him. Their death left a wound in his heart. He believed that no one had the right to take lives, even in such a cruel world. With fury, Wade stepped forward. He had to get revenge, and only he had the right to do so. His voice trembled with years of accumulated anger. The opponent froze, tilting his head slightly as if recognizing something. His gaze became focused, almost scrutinizing. He calmly stated that he had seen Wade in the past, and now everything was clear. At that moment, a grim rage appeared in the enemy's eyes. He became noticeably angrier. Wade attacked furiously, lunging forward with his spear, his voice cracking as he demanded, "What's your goal?" He screamed, remembering the day his friends' lives were taken for no reason right in front of him. It wasn't an attack for money or revenge. The enemy had simply appeared out of nowhere, annihilated everyone, and vanished. Now encountering him again in the dungeon, Wade couldn't contain his rage. "Why are you back? What are you looking for this time?" Wade recoiled as the blade sliced halfway through his arm, blood gushing, his fingers going limp. He cried out in pain. The enemy stared coldly, expressionless, and asked a question as if he didn't understand what was happening himself. "Why are you still alive? Why did you survive?" He had killed everyone without exception in the dungeons. No one ever left. If he didn't find out the reason, something similar could happen again. Wade charged forward furiously, shouting that he was the one asking the questions here. The enemy, without blinking, muttered a word: "Resurrection." He seemed to realize something important and added that Wade was the dungeon master. In the next second, a fierce battle erupted. No matter how many blows Wade landed, the other man dodged with inhuman speed. But in the end, just when it seemed the fight would drag on, the enemy suddenly changed tactics and with one precise movement, severed half of Wade's legs. Wade gritted his teeth in pain, fell to one knee and clutched the remnants of his legs, which were wrapped in congealing shadows. He snarled through his teeth, cursing his opponent for his speed and strength. The pulsating shadows hindered his regeneration and seemed to drain the last of his energy. The enemy, standing at a distance, watched him coldly and without approaching said indifferently, "Perhaps now you'll calm down a bit." An ominous silence thickened around them. The enemy approached and, suppressing his rage, repeated the question, his gaze fixed on Wade. He couldn't allow anything to remain unfinished. Wade, almost out of strength, with wounds all over his body, still lifted his head and answered. One of his comrades had used ancient magic on him, found deep within the dungeon. It was a spell capable of putting the body into a state of anabiosis, where vital functions cease, giving a chance to survive on the brink of death. Wade spoke with difficulty, recalling that moment. The magic had only been used on him, the only one whose wounds were still treatable. His comrades had gambled everything on the spell, putting his body into anabiosis and deceiving the killer. When the effect wore off, the enemy had already left the dungeon. The man nodded, coldly processing what he had heard. Such conditions were impossible to replicate. The magic was rare, ancient, with a narrow scope of application and strict requirements, accessible to only a few. Wade, gritting his teeth, leaned on his spear and slowly stood up, his eyes fixed on his foe. Suddenly moving behind him, he thrust his spear in an attack, demanding an answer. The man still hadn't explained why he had reappeared in the dungeon. However, the enemy, without losing his composure, raised his sword and managed to block the blow at the last moment. Metal screeched against metal, and the tension in the air became unbearable. The enemy calmly stated, as if justifying himself, that he had killed them because it was necessary. As long as he hadn't saved this world, any sacrifices were permissible. At that very moment, a sudden dull thud echoed around Wade's head. Something invisible struck him on the temple. He coldly stated that it was time for Wade to return, and at that moment he delivered a powerful sword strike to his stomach. Wade flew backward and fell to the ground, breathing heavily. Without wasting time, the attacker approached and with a powerful, sweeping kick, struck him in the head, causing his body to convulse and then lie motionless. After the blow to the head, Wade collapsed to the ground, losing strength. The enemy paused for a moment, looking down, then hoarsely said, "Hate me all you want." Just as the enemy was preparing to deliver the final blow, Sasha intervened. She darted forward and plunged her sword into his stomach, shouting, "Don't kill Wade." The man spun around sharply, intending to finish her, but before he could strike, a sudden burst of power threw both of them in opposite directions, sending them flying through the air and scattering to different parts of the dungeon. Sasha Nia spread her wings and, breathing heavily, stood between the opponents, looking at Wade with reproach. He struggled to lift his head when he heard the familiar voice. The winged girl looked at him and calmly said that he had acted unfairly by not calling her to such a battle. The enemy recoiled, recognizing her, and asked why they were there. Sasha Nia smiled slightly and replied that the girl had come to her herself. Sasha Nia gripped the shining artifact, which Wade had given her earlier, more tightly in her hand. It flared up as she approached the dungeon, pointing the way. The girl hadn't been wrong, it had indeed led her to where the battle was raging. This item always found what you were looking for, and now it had led her straight to her friend. She remembered feeling that Wade was in danger and immediately set off without hesitation. The enemy uttered the word dragon in surprise, looking at Sasha Nia with her wings spread. She replied curtly with cold determination. Then, without losing a second, she clenched her fists, concentrating power within herself. Her voice was firm and calm like a verdict. "Criminal, are you ready for your fate?" In the next moment, she unleashed dragon fire, which swiftly enveloped the enemy. The charred and burned body, engulfed in flames, barely stood. He struggled to lift his head, and through the crackling ashen smoke he rasped, "As expected, my body can't withstand dragon fire." There was no fear in his voice, only a hoarse statement of fact. Then, barely standing, he looked at Sasha Nia and Wade, squinted through the smoke, and quietly added, "I'll have to retreat now." As if giving an order, he uttered a short vanish and disappeared into thick clouds of black smoke. Wade, realizing he couldn't stop him, shouted with tension in his voice, "This is bad." The brunette appeared suddenly, stood before them, and said, as if on cue, "Light against darkness, attribute change. Classic, isn't it?" Then, calmly raising her index finger, she gathered shimmering cubes in the air, as if controlling them with a single movement. Suddenly, it became apparent that the enemy had tried to escape, taking advantage of the chaos. However, he didn't succeed. His gaze showed tension and the realization that his escape was failing. The enemy sat on the ground, surrounded by glowing cubes that formed an enclosed space. He tried to move, but his body wouldn't obey. The magical trap had completely deprived him of the ability to move. Wade stood nearby, watching him. He said with a slight smirk, "How are you feeling? You're finally awake." The enemy, with a downcast gaze, quietly asked for death, understanding that before him was someone who desired vengeance. He didn't resist or defend himself, as if he had accepted his fate. The brunette didn't take her eyes off him, and her voice was confident. She explained that everything happening was a trap set against him. He wasn't human, but merely a ghostly entity, a soul without a body. The magic he used had been analyzed in particles, and now it was clear to her, his current body had been stolen by him. Clenching her fists, she stood before the captured enemy, coldly stating her decision. Catching him alive proved to be the most advantageous option, as he could no longer escape. His ability was strong but limited. He couldn't leave his body until it was destroyed. She firmly declared that she would find a way to get rid of him permanently, despite his ghostly nature. Her voice didn't waver, her resolve was complete. Neither she nor her allies intended to give up. He stared straight ahead, showing neither fear nor regret. He remembered neither faces nor names, and he had no intention of doing so. The past didn't matter. He wasn't interested in personal stories, grievances, or feelings. His sole focus was the threat looming over the entire world. According to him, if nothing was done now, everything would disappear. His goal was to stop the impending catastrophe at any cost. Everything else was meaningless to him. The enemy's words made everyone freeze. One of them, looking closely, asked to wait, feeling that he might actually be telling the truth. But another couldn't hold back, indignantly shouting for him not to talk nonsense. Her voice trembled with tension. Suspiciously, she asked what exactly he considered a catastrophe. The answer was a single word: apocalypse, something that would consume the entire world. And then, in the silence, the most terrifying question was asked: was everything truly destined to perish? He whispered softly, gazing into the void as if disbelieving his own words, "My mother." He was referring to Lady Sophia. At the same time, far from the battlefield, amidst darkness and panic, goblins and small creatures gathered around Sophia. Is the end of the world already here? The guy who decided to help them, having overheard the previous conversation, announced that they were about to meet with a special royal advisor. He emphasized that she was a very important figure, involved not only in politics but also in military affairs. One of them was surprised, saying that even he had never met her personally. Another exclaimed with admiration, realizing they were talking about the saint herself. Their companion admitted she hadn't expected such connections from their ally. He calmly replied that they should be grateful for his connections, reputation, and influence. After the refusal, one of the girls calmly stated that his blood would suffice. Then, as if nothing had happened, she suggested they go eat after the meeting, mentioning an excellent spot. She complained that aristocrats were too tiresome and didn't even realize their misdeeds were about to come to light. Expressing confidence that they would be delighted with treats that couldn't be prepared in a dungeon, she added that she was already hungry from how long everything was taking. Then she snorted at the carelessness of those around them and suggested buying something delicious for the master and Bura too. The maids politely invited the guests inside. A step above, with her back to them, stood Sophia in complete serenity. At that moment they remembered his child's words, "The calamity that will consume the entire world is my mother." He spoke of her with cold certainty. She changes names and appearances, playing with this world like a toy. His mother is the queen of the dungeon, a being who has lived since time immemorial. Her amusement is an eternal cycle of destruction and rebirth. Everything she does is for pleasure. The annihilation of civilization is just entertainment for her, and it's only a matter of time. Perhaps it will happen in 100 years, or maybe tomorrow. This witch has created and destroyed countless civilizations, relishing each of their demises. Everyone had heard of dungeon owners and the endless wars for control over them, but few knew that she was at the root of these conflicts. All of it was orchestrated merely for spectacle, for observing bloodshed and chaos. Dungeon wars had only one purpose: to increase the amount of territory under her control. When asked directly if he killed innocents to fight her, he didn't answer immediately. The scale of what was happening was frightening. Even if his mother truly embodied evil, the methods of fighting her raised doubts. Yet it was obvious she was no gift. He stood looking straight ahead, as if addressing everyone at once. Destruction for him wasn't cruelty, but a way to strip her of immortality. Dungeons across the world were just part of the plan, sacrificed for the salvation of millions. He killed all witnesses because he didn't know which of them might be her eyes, her voice. The air filled with a crackling sound, as if something was breaking or snapping inside. He said he would simply find a new body if this one was destroyed. And he added calmly, "If you hate me, kill me." Nia approached closer, quietly speaking his name. Wade, breathing heavily, responded to her and briefly looked away. Tension was in his voice, but he understood everything. Nodding almost imperceptibly, he said he knew it wasn't the right thing to do, at least not right now. Nia speculated that she was probably trying to undermine the foundations of some state, as she always sought power. They asked if there were any ideas where her mother might be now. If it was this country, then the capital was the most logical place. The mention of the capital made them uneasy. That's where the criminal controlling Sasha's mind was hiding. They confirmed, "Yes, Lady Lemmy." Popple tensed up, but they reassured him. In response, a voice said, "Relax, friend, I gave Eliza the same magical artifact." Holding the artifact in her hand, she explained that if one of them broke, the other would also be destroyed, as they were linked. In case of danger, the artifact was supposed to immediately signal. However, at that very moment, the device in her hand sharply cracked, covered in fissures, and with a dull sound fell apart. Nia cried out that she would fly there immediately. She asked where the capital was. Upon receiving the answer that it was a large city at the foot of the castle to the southeast, she said she understood. She added that if she flew closer, she could track the magic of their quartet. When asked if she could handle it, she confidently replied that she was faster than the wind. Nia took off at immense speed, leaving only a whirlwind of dust and smoke behind her. She shouted that she would be back before dinner. One of those remaining said that if it was really her, she was certainly capable of defeating any enemy and returning unharmed. Everyone looked up at the sky. She had already vanished into the distance. Only a quiet, hopeful anticipation remained. A little earlier, Lady Sophia, without excessive formality, thanked him for his time. She noted that he had returned alive, which was impressive, as he had dared to venture into the dragon's dungeon with the dragon slayer himself. It seemed the count held no interest for her. She turned her attention to those nearby and remarked that she was seeing them for the first time. She asked directly who they were to him. A pause ensued, then came a sharp question: why even arrange a meeting if not for them? It felt as if someone else interested her, and if that was the case, they should immediately get to the point. They had come from the dragon's dungeon, where they rescued the count, which is why he arranged their meeting with Sophia. Inside, they found a royal knight in a state of clouded mind. After analysis, it was discovered that his consciousness had been externally influenced right here in the capital. He even attacked acquaintances. If this happened again, the consequences would be dangerous for the entire country. For the first time, Sophia took what was said seriously and listened attentively. She thanked them for their help, calling it invaluable, and promised to immediately begin an investigation. Everything went smoothly, but one of the girls suddenly cried out, declaring she couldn't take it anymore. The other was startled, then indignant at her audacity. They began to argue. The atmosphere became tense, but one of them admitted she was just hungry, which confused everyone and diffused the situation. A pleasant aroma emanates from her, as if aged for tens of thousands of years. This scent is clearly linked to magic. The others feel a strange unease, while one of them asks again about what was said. Tens of thousands of years. He can't understand what she's talking about. She, as if hinting, doesn't specify directly, only smiles slightly. Everyone starts to wonder what exactly she meant and how ancient the powers hidden behind it are. Sophia, standing on the step with a slight smile, calmly stated that she had made her decision. At that moment, a black aura, thick and dense like a mass of darkness, emanated from her body. The aura slowly spread across the floor, making everyone around her wary. Her gaze remained unperturbed, her movements graceful and confident. Despite the growing tension, she seemed to enjoy the situation, taking her time to reveal her true intentions. He created a protective film around himself from the black aura and exhaled heavily. Even simple protection from her spell caused him incredible strain, his body constricted under the pressure. The film trembled, barely holding back the power emanating from Sophia. Her dark energy continued to press from all sides, not weakening for a second. With a cry, one of the companions recoiled, feeling the increasing pressure. "This is a problem," he gasped, trembling with fear. Lady Sophia, standing higher on the step, didn't move, only continued to smile. An incomprehensible darkness emanated from her, and everything around seemed to shrink. One of the knights tried to understand what was happening, but could barely utter her name. "What's happening?" he whispered, feeling the air grow heavier and darker. One of them whispered in horror that they had no chance against her, realizing they would have to share the same fate as the others. The darkness thickened and despair echoed in his voice. He wondered what would become of him now, recognizing the inevitable. His breathing hitched, his hands trembled. Everything happening already seemed predetermined. The last thing he uttered was a simple word: sorry, as if trying to apologize for not being able to prevent what had happened. Now she quietly said that she was leaving everything to him, weighed, and added nothing more. With those words, her silhouette began to dissolve into streams of light. He stood silently, feeling the full weight of the decision and responsibility settle on his shoulders. Neither the darkness nor the fear disappeared, but now he was alone in the face of the impending threat. Everything that happened next depended solely on him. She considered the dragon's dungeon a place where it would be a bit boring, but now everything began to change. Events unfolded unexpectedly, and the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. She looked forward with a slight smile, anticipating what would happen next. With each passing moment, her interest only intensified, as what was happening promised to be far more exciting than she had expected. Suddenly, a massive dragon with curved horns and long, sharp claws burst through the ceiling from above, shattering the stone with a roar. Debris rains down, and the floor beneath their feet shakes. The creature powerfully crashes inside, spreading its wings and roaring. Its eyes gleam with fury, and its presence fills the entire space, overwhelming those around it. The air heats up, and the magical aura can be felt even from a distance. The magical aura of the four people suddenly vanished, leaving the others in tense silence. The question arises, have they perished? Perhaps, but no one can say for sure. There are no answers, only anxiety. However, one thing is clear: the strongest of the living will now face the most terrifying enemy. The greatest battle begins right now, and everything around them holds its breath, awaiting its outcome. Sunny, in her dream, finds herself next to a guy whose bare back she notices first. He utters her name in a restrained voice. She screams in panic, calling him master. Embarrassment overwhelms her, and she whispers that she needs to mentally prepare herself. In reality, someone nearby says with surprise that she has finally woken up. Sunny wakes up with a scream, asking in a panic what's happening, and complains that she'd like to cry too. She looks around in confusion, while a voice greets her with a good morning. It's Master Dolta, who asks with a smile if she slept well. The girl looks around in surprise and asks where they are, to which she receives the answer: in the library. But then the master adds that there's something else here, hinting at something unexpected. Sunny notices a rabbit that has appeared. Her face immediately lights up with a smile, and she exclaims, "How adorable!" Dolta feels the air around them literally filled with magic, realizing they are in a dungeon. However, he immediately doubts it, as everything seems too calm. Suddenly, he notices something strange and asks with alarm, "What is that?" And then she says with surprise, "Isn't this paradise?" Dolta reminds the others that the teleportation happened by Sophia's will. He speculates that she is the one who brought Sasha to such a state. If this woman is indeed an ancient mage who has lived for thousands of years, it's hard to even imagine what kind of art she possesses. They begin to realize the scale of the threat. Someone exclaims that this means they are in great danger. However, they note that they are still alive, and that is already lucky. They are warned to be careful, as there might be traps here. The others agree and confirm what was said. One of them exclaims in irritation that she's fed up with these dungeons and declares that they urgently need to find a way out. At that moment, a black cat with white paws appears and calmly approaches. It unexpectedly spoke, offering help and playing with words, saying it could lend a paw. The black cat with white paws introduces itself as Lawrence and says that it was once a human. One of them screams in shock that the cat spoke. Lawrence explains that Sophia trapped him here and now he's in the same situation as them. After that, he suggests joining forces and asks what they think about it. Lawrence says that they are in the Dungeon of Memory, where there are no deadly traps, but if they spend too much time here, they can lose their memory and turn into an animal belonging to Sophia. He assures them that this is true. One of them doesn't believe it and calls it madness, but Lawrence calmly asks them to look at themselves, hinting that the transformation has already begun. One of them notices in a panic that he has started to change and is already forgetting something important. Fear overwhelms him. He screams, asking what is happening to him and if they have already fallen into Sophia's trap. Another asks Lawrence how he retains his memories. Lawrence says that urgent measures must be taken, otherwise memory loss will lead to loss of identity. The cat explains that he used to be a mage and memory protection is his specialty. He uses magic to preserve his memories. One of them is surprised by what the cat is saying, and Master Dolta confirms what he heard. At that moment, he unexpectedly asks if he can cut Lawrence a little, causing shock among the others. The cat calmly replies that he is not an enemy. He explains that he only needs one drop of blood to make sure that the person he's talking to is not the master of this dungeon. If it turns out he's connected to it, the wound will heal immediately. He adds that it's normal to have doubts in such a situation. The person agrees, not objecting to the test. One says that he is not an enemy and asks to be healed. The girl notices that the wound is not healing. The cat laughs and says that this means he is definitely not the master of the dungeon. He apologizes, promises to fix everything himself, and asks for a hand. The others watch carefully. Magical energy begins to manifest. The atmosphere remains tense. It's quiet all around. No one moves. Everything depends on the cat's next action. The cat looks surprised and asks what he did. Dolta explains that she cast a truth-telling curse on him, meaning he can no longer lie. This is for verification, as using his blood wasn't just for fun. Even if he isn't the dungeon master, that's no reason to trust him completely. The others become wary. The silence is heavy. The cat, feeling the magic inside, realizes he's bound. The atmosphere grows tenser. Everyone waits for his reaction. Suspicions intensify, and everyone watches the cat warily. One of them says that Sophia would hardly leave the dungeon unsupervised, meaning one of her minions must still be nearby. Suspicion falls on Lawrence, as he was the first to speak. The teacher apologizes if he's wrong and suggests they start over. He then grimly remarks that some blood wouldn't hurt right now, making the others flinch. They whisper that the teacher is starting to scare them. Lawrence admits he is a mage responsible for managing the Dungeon of Memories and declares himself their enemy. One of them screams in horror, while another looks at the cat with pity and says he had a hunch. He sighs and admits he got too relaxed after a long period of solitude, only interacting with books and animals. After his confession, Lawrence stops pretending. A magical flash envelops his body and he transforms into his true form, a fair-haired man in a black cloak. He leans on special arm supports, similar to crutches, to move around. Eliza looks at Lawrence in his true form and declares she'll kill him if he's an enemy. He smirks and calls her a feisty girl. She frowns and says she doesn't care if this is his real form. Lawrence calmly admits that both girls look beautiful, enjoying their reactions. Eliza shoves him off the second floor. After falling, he gets up and says it's not his place to teach her, but still advises her to be more careful. At that moment, a pile of books falls from above, covering the girl. She cries out in surprise, unable to dodge. Books fall directly onto her face. She yelps and asks in confusion what just happened. Then she quickly regains her composure and resolutely says they need to move on. Hearing her voice, Dolta cries out and anxiously asks if she's okay, calling her by name. He explained that his magic transforms memories into books, and all these volumes are memories extracted from the minds of various people. He clarified that the creatures inhabiting this place are not just beasts but empty shells of former humans stripped of their memories. He prides himself on his collection, claiming that each book is a part of someone's life. Memory magic is his specialty, and he uses it without regret. He said that with long-lived beings, things are much more complicated and he can't just take their memories instantly. He admitted he'd like to collect everything at once, but he has enough time to act gradually. According to him, those who end up here have two options. Either they slowly dissolve in this space, losing their memories, or he will personally collect their memories. The The choice is theirs to decide which fate they prefer. Eliza rejected the offered choice, stating that she was content with her own life. She emphasized that she enjoys reading stories at her leisure and has no intention of becoming someone else's reading material. The man called her hobby terrible, as the books here are people transformed into covers of memories. Despite this, he declared he would study her book to the last page, but Eliza sharply condemned him, unwilling to surrender or allow herself to be read like an object. He raised his hand, holding a device resembling a walking aid, pointing it upwards. At that moment, the air filled with magical tension, and all the books which had been standing still suddenly flew from their places. They began to move in a circular current, forming a vortex of memories. Each book glowed as if absorbing the spell's power. He declared that it was time to become part of his library, and the spell activated, drawing the target into the swirling magical circle. He directed a torrent of books towards his opponent, each flying at incredible speed like a projectile. But at that very instant, a magical wall composed of translucent cubes began to form in front of the target. They arranged themselves into a dense defensive structure familiar from previous battles. The book struck the barrier, but it didn't crack, it merely shimmered with tension. The spell worked just in time, completely blocking the attack. He recoiled, staring at the impenetrable defense of hundreds of glowing cubes that filled the entire space. He exclaimed, recognizing the source of that artifact. At that moment, a brunette and Wade appeared nearby, their figures emerging from a shining background. They stood side by side, observing what was happening. The brunette remarked that they had arrived just in time. The defensive magic spread through the hall, completely blocking the space of books. He apologized for being late and lightly jumped down from the wall, landing in front of everyone. A voice rang out from above, "Master Wade." Wade looked at him with a slight smirk and said, "A new guest, what story will you give me?" The atmosphere around them froze, and the books hung in the air, awaiting further developments. He calmly commented on his body's enhancement, noting that the power was decent, but close combat wasn't the best idea. In the next moment, he approached with lightning speed, grabbed him by the face, and tried to extract his memories to turn them into a book. Magical energy flared, and translucent pages swirled around them. The mage forcefully pushed away his enemy's hand, not allowing him to touch his mind again. The girl screamed, urging him to stop, and rushed forward. Wade, slightly shaken, confirmed he was fine, thanking her for the support. Behind him, defensive magic was already gathering, ready for the next strike. The cat leaped forward and grabbed the blood sword, declaring she was taking it for herself. Eliza admitted that the enemy's magic was truly nasty and explained that she had left her own weapon in the royal castle. Now with this sword she could help. Sunny was encouraged not to fall behind. Approaching cautiously, they understood that the enemy's touch was dangerous, but the only way to win was to get closer and strike first. He noted that with memory loss, mental abilities also decline. The idea of recording memories in books seemed interesting. The girl agreed. He was surprised at how well she had figured out how to get to this place. At that moment, unexpected help arrived, and he repeated the last word with slight surprise, doubting if it was truly unexpected. She speculated that Sophia would most likely imprison them in the Dungeon of Memories to gather information. Her mother doesn't kill enemies immediately, and her magic in this place is dangerous. The guy confirmed he knew. The girl asked where the necessary place was. He replied that he hadn't destroyed it yet, but he knew where it was. Then they decided to speed up and reach the dungeon as quickly as possible without wasting time. Given the known coordinates, they decided to teleport there using magic if they could do it together. The main goal was to save their comrades left in the dungeon. Neo would handle the enemies in the capital. The story of what was happening was complicated, and he promised to explain everything later. The girl clarified what this place, the Dungeon of Memories, was, and added that she was also interested in learning more about the magic they called nasty. She said she hoped the spell he was about to cast would work. She asked if he had a plan to get out of there. With a slight smirk, he replied that he was a quick thinker and had already completed his analysis. They both knew time was short. They had to act immediately. Any delay could be fatal. The magical energy around them began to thicken, foreshadowing a new phase of confrontation in the dungeon. Wade and Sunny heard a scream and turned around. He stood in the center of the hall, activating a glowing barrier that absorbed all magical flows. Now the enemy couldn't extract memories or cast spells. The space became neutral. Wade thanked him, and Sunny, inspired, praised her teacher. The teacher, with a displeased smirk, admitted that fighting without magic was much more boring. But the battle wasn't over yet, and now everything depended on physical strength. He smirked as he approached the shelf above Dolt's head and reached for a book, hoping to break the barrier, but the brunette stepped into his path. She moved forward, blocking access, and warned him in a cold voice. If he touched it, it would only be over her dead body. The tension intensified, and the mage flinched, assessing his opponent's resolve. The barrier was still active, and now it was much harder to destroy. The brunette firmly stated that passing her was impossible. But at that moment, Wade unexpectedly appeared behind the enemy with a spear in hand. Without losing a second, he delivered a precise blow to the back, piercing the enemy's defenses. The enemy flinched sharply in pain and surprise, not expecting an attack from behind. The blow disrupted his concentration, the books trembled, and the magical aura around him began to dissipate. The situation began to turn in their favor. He hit the shelf, collapsed to the floor, and lay there, consumed by the memories erupting from the nearby book. His whole body ached, and he struggled to breathe. A thought pounded in his head. This is why he hated fighting. All he wanted was to live peacefully, without pain, without screams. But at that moment, someone's foot appeared before his eyes, a heavy, confident stride approaching step by step. Wade's spear in hand pointed its tip directly at the fallen enemy. His voice was calm but full of determination. The demand was clear: return everyone to their former state. The enemy merely smirked, barely lifting his head, and croaked that he wasn't going to give up. Despite the pain and exhaustion, he slowly began to stand, leaning on his support, an artifact that seemed to have fused with his body. He spoke with contempt, calling Wade young and overconfident, implying that strength was no reason for arrogance. A barrage of books rained down on Wade from nowhere, as if a magical explosion of memory had burst forth. Heavy volumes crashed down, burying him from head to toe. Dust swirled in the air, and in the blink of an eye, he was completely submerged under piles of pages and bindings. Only his eyes, wide open and full of determination, remained visible from beneath the weight, glinting through the gaps between the books. He slowly rose, shaking off torn pages and dust. His gaze darted to the barrier, and the corners of his lips curved into a cold smirk. An anti-magic barrier? How clever. He clenched his fist where a faint symbol glowed. Because of this, I'll have to resort to my trump card. A step forward echoed through the hall, and he pointed directly at Wade. We'll go one by one. Let's start with you. His blurry gaze focused on a flickering flame. A scene seemed to surface before him. Sasha sitting by a campfire, figures resembling his parents nearby, warm light reflected in their eyes. They conversed quietly as if nothing had happened. Their voices were muffled, as if through water. Wade blinked, trying to understand where he really was. All of this was too real, or too dangerous. The floor beneath his feet vanished, and Wade plunged into an abyss hidden between the bookshelves. Walls made of books stretched upwards, and he fell deeper and deeper into the darkness. Pages flashed around him, on which fragments of memories came alive. Voices, faces, images. Everything merged into chaos. It seemed the library was consuming his mind, layer by layer, dissecting his past. Wade sat under a tree, breathing heavily, surrounded by silence. There was no campfire, no warmth around him, only a dim light emanating from an unknown source. Sylvia stood before him, looking at him calmly. Her voice sounded unusually even. He tried to stand, but his body wouldn't obey. Familiar surroundings began to appear around him, as if torn from his memory, but distorted like a stranger's. Sylvia's words echoed in his head, but he didn't begin to realize that he was stuck inside his own memories. Sylvia, Lex, and Ray stood before Wade, smiling as if everything happening was a normal celebration. Sylvia handed him a book with a magical symbol on its cover. Lex carefully placed an amulet in his palm, and Ray gave him a silver ring. Each said something warm, as if saying goodbye. But something was wrong. Their movements were cyclical, their voices repeated. Wade realized this wasn't reality. This was a looped memory, and he was being held here, trapped in the dungeon. Keen lay on the grass, covered by a light cloak, an empty mug beside him. Sylvia waved cheerfully, demanding he wake up, but Lex smirked and explained that he'd overdone it again. Ray added that the full moon had been recent, apparently that was making itself known. The whole company laughed, discussing Keen, but Wade began to realize that all of this was just an illusion. The setting was too perfect. The voices echoed like a memory stuck in eternal repetition. Mabris looked away, tossing a twig into the campfire, and quietly mumbled that he remembered something unpleasant. Sylvia frowned but didn't press, only saying that if he needed them, they were there. Meanwhile, Lex tried to boil water but set the pot on fire again, which made everyone laugh. Ray sighed and took over brewing the concoction himself, while Wade silently watched, realizing that before him were his warmest memories, now threatened with disappearance. He looked around. Everyone was there, laughing, joking, caring for each other, but something inside him felt like it was breaking. He knew this wasn't real. These faces, voices, even the warmth of the campfire, it was all an illusion, a memory created to hold him. The brighter the scene became, the more his chest ached. He whispered, almost disbelieving himself, that he was glad to see it all, but his heart was clenching because he would have to let go. The brunette clenched her fists, watching Wade's body remain motionless, surrounded only by a soft magical glow. The wizard standing nearby calmly explained that his consciousness was trapped in memories. Any attempt to forcibly pull him out could sever the delicate thread connecting his mind to his body. All they could do now was wait and hope that Wade would find his own way back. Wade lay peacefully, as if in a deep sleep, his face expressing peace and a slight smile, as if he were reliving happy moments from the past. One of his companions, looking at him, whispered that waking him now would be to snatch him from a rare tranquility. The sweet slumber, gifted by the magic of memories, temporarily shielded him from pain and worries. However, no one knew if he would be able to return on his own, or if he would forever remain in the illusion of forgotten happiness. They sat around the campfire, the flames crackling softly, casting a warm light on their faces. Someone poured hot broth, another mended a strap on a robe, and calm conversations could be heard. Suddenly, the girl sitting closest to the trees froze and squinted. In the shadows by the bushes, she noticed a black cat, quietly observing from afar, its eyes gleaming in the darkness like a pair of embers. The girl stood up and approached, examining the black cat. It meowed and stepped forward, a metallic collar glinting on its neck. She bent down to read the inscription, but at that very moment her body trembled. Glowing symbols swirled around her, and a second later she disintegrated into the air, transforming into dozens of floating pages. The cat watched calmly, then vanished into the darkness. Barely lifting his head, Wade whispered, "Sylvia." Someone in the room noticed. "This guy." He looked at the black cat which stood amidst the fading light. Wade's gaze met the cat's eyes, filled with an inexplicable anxiety. The stranger turned around as if sensing something, looked at the cat, and the next moment, his silhouette dissolved into the air, leaving no trace. The dwarf mage Gauze, barely uttering a word, was consumed by magic and transformed into a book, like a memory etched forever. A girl with a trembling voice stepped forward, struggling to hold her weapon steady. Clearly uncertain but resolute, she cried out, trying not to betray her fear, and, "Don't move, otherwise I'll attack." Her hands shook, but her gaze remained focused, ready to defend herself to the end. Mabris raised her hand, hesitating, but didn't manage to cast a spell. The mysterious opponent spoke as if knowing her past, a spirit body stripped of combat magic after a severe injury once carelessly inflicted. Hearing this, she froze, recognition and fear flashing in her eyes. Before she could react, Mabris was enveloped in light, her body vanishing, leaving behind only a single book that softly fell onto the stone floor. They stood opposite each other under the starry sky. The stranger holding a book calmly said, "A beautiful night, isn't it? This memory is marked as one of the happiest moments. I could bathe you in these images for a long time, letting them slowly corrode your soul, but alas, the next one awaits me." Wade clenched his fists, holding his breath. "You vile bastard," he hissed. The opponent smirked. "That's why I had to ruin everything at once. How do you like it?" Wade gritted his teeth, surveying the familiar landscapes that appeared before him. "I finally remembered. Are these my past memories?" His voice trembled with rage. "Don't you dare trample them with your dirty feet." The opponent merely smirked. "Exactly, this is the world of your dreams. Well, how does it feel to relive having your loved ones senselessly taken from you again?" The words pierced like blades, but Wade didn't look away, standing on the brink of fury and pain. Wade lay on the floor, his body unresponsive, his movements jerky and slow. The opponent stood nearby, watching with a smirk, mockingly speaking about how Wade's mind and body no longer matched in strength and size. He said there was nothing surprising about it, as memories confused perception. Wade tried to get up, but his muscles wouldn't obey. He gritted his teeth, fury evident in his gaze, but the enemy approached calmly and confidently. Meanwhile, he stood before Wade, watching him barely stay on his feet. In a calm voice, he reminded Wade that his memories were already starting to disappear, one by one, as if they had never existed. He smirked, saying that soon there would be nothing left, no faces, no names, no feelings. Then he leaned closer, as if provoking him, and quietly added, "But he'll still resist, won't he? Just as I expected." While the two argued, oblivious to their surroundings, a huge wolf with glasses emerged from the shadows. He calmly walked towards them, stepping silently, and stopped a little distance away, carefully observing the situation. His appearance was imposing, a powerful figure, a stern gaze through his spectacles. A tense silence hung for a moment as those present realized his arrival and the significance of this new participant in the scene. Keen approached, not hiding the disgust in his voice. He looked at Wade and apologized for being late, mentioning the spoiled celebratory wine. Then, surveying the distorted space, he confirmed his suspicions. This was indeed Wade's world of memories. The surroundings resembled the past but felt fake and distorted. Keen frowned, feeling how the memory distortion affected even emotions, and prepared for the next step. A thud echoed through the dark library and images froze before Keen, the shadows of those who had passed. One of them said that Wade shouldn't have woken up before dawn that night, no matter how much he was beat. They admitted they were just fragments of the past, but even after death they could help a comrade. "Isn't that happiness?" one of them asked. Looking into their faces, filled with a bright sadness, Keen barely whispered, "I'm sorry." In his wolf form, Keen approached, his heightened sense of smell allowing him to distinguish every trace of the beast. He looked at the opponent with regret, then turned to Wade. In honor of his promotion, Keen promised to impart a technique, Qigong and the Path of Enlightenment, the foundation of his martial art. Wade was surprised, but Keen smirked. He had already seen this moment in his memories, how he had once received Qigong. The shape-shifting priest Quen watched Wade, reminding him that in the past he had failed to grasp Qi due to immaturity, and his gift had been in vain. He demanded focus, but Wade, overwhelmed with thoughts, complained about the difficulty. Quen emphasized that understanding Qi wasn't just knowledge, but the ability to feel it within oneself in nature and in an opponent. It was something more than magic, a flow that needed to be caught, felt, and directed. This was the foundation of his martial art. Quen reminded him that everything depended on diligent training, and the more Wade practiced, the higher his chance of grasping the essence of Qi. He noted that Wade lacked experience and suggested starting with meditation, urging him not to abandon the path of development. Stubbornly agreeing, the young man continued his attempts but never mastered Qi. This technique proved too difficult for him, or he was simply incapable. However, Quen merely chuckled softly. All of that was in the past, and perhaps now everything would change. Quen, with a slight smile, noted Wade's growth. His voice was confident. He believed in him. The young man nodded energetically in response, clenching his fists, and with determination in his voice, declared that together they would overcome all challenges. Feeling the flow of Qi within himself, Wade focused on his breathing, center of gravity, and body movement. He delved into each twist, trying to feel the internal energy in minute detail. Quen explained that knowing one's body was the foundation of the technique, allowing one to deliver a blow capable of piercing even the most resilient defense. Wade closed his eyes and concentrated. Quen continued to teach, emphasizing the importance of sensing the opponent's chi. If Wade attuned himself correctly, he could anticipate movements in advance and parry attacks in time. He had to notice even the slightest transitions between stillness and action to seize the moment. Quen admiringly noted his speed and power, but added that it was still not enough for perfection. Quen watched in surprise as Wade dodged a blow before it had fully formed. His body moved autonomously, precisely sensing the moment of attack. He finally felt the flow of chi, something he hadn't understood before. Instincts and sensations merged, and he didn't think but simply acted. Quen nodded with respect, realizing that Wade had taken the first true step towards understanding martial arts. Going through the pain of destruction and the joy of restoration again and again, Wade gradually realized his essence and learned to control it without hesitation. His body, mind, and senses now worked as a single unit. Everything he had ever studied, all the lessons and trials, merged within him into a perfect flow. Becoming the new owner of the labyrinth, he felt the power of great magic awakening, hidden deep within his soul. The opponent recoiled in astonishment, disbelieving what was happening. He cried out that it was impossible, that such power could not awaken in a mere mortal. His face contorted with rage. He raised his hand, preparing to deliver a decisive blow. But Wade already stood before him, confident and calm. His energy no longer wavered, it flowed clearly, powerfully. His gaze was firm, his body in balance. The final battle was beginning. As the opponent hung helplessly in the air, Wade gathered all his concentrated energy into a fist, felt the flow of chi, and precisely directed a powerful blow straight into the enemy's chest. The air shuddered from the force of the impact, the opponent's body was thrown back, and magical impulses scattered around, shattering the illusion of space. There was no such moment recorded. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the area, everything around them was bathed in a soft glow. Wade, standing in silence, noticed his opponent's silhouette begin to fade, as if dissolving into thin air. Without a sound or trace, it vanished, leaving behind only a feather slowly drifting to the ground. Once everything settled down, the girl surveyed the clearing and asked where the kitty was. She remembered that 3 of them had already returned, but it was unclear how exactly that happened. No one really understood what had occurred, but one thing was clear: the anomalies were disappearing and the space was gradually returning to its normal state. The magical distortions had dissipated, the air was cleaner, and the light was softer. Mabris quietly stated that her role here was complete, then slowly turned away, gazing into the distance. Wade stood in the center of the cleared space, looking at his friends. One of them smiled and said they would always be by his side, then with a feigned threat added, "If you die, I'll kill you." Another, frowning slightly, remarked that it would be better not to die at all. Wade nodded quietly, feeling a warmth spread within him. He thanked them with a genuine smile, and in that moment it became clear he was no longer alone. A thought flashed through his mind. Was his mental projection destroyed? The next moment, an expression of horror appeared on his face, and he cried out, unable to believe what was happening. Wade picked up the black cat, and she meowed softly, settling on his shoulder. He looked at her and with a slight smile said that it had all been fun. Then he paused for a moment and added that he had something to say. Thanking her, he acknowledged that she had indeed done a great job. After the wave of damage subsided, one of them shouted that they could start now. He explained that otherwise, it would be impossible to cast a permanent spell over the entire area, as the memory extraction magic used the dungeon's core as a conduit. If they destroyed this core, all the magic in that place would also be destroyed. Without hesitation, they decided to break it at any cost. Dozens of rescued, bewildered, but alive people stood around them. Someone noted that there were too many of them, and it was now important to escape before the dungeon completely collapsed. One of them joyfully exclaimed that they had managed to bring everyone back and that the former monsters really were people. When a commotion began, an authoritative voice demanded silence and told them to follow him. It was Count Sevenslight who introduced himself as their savior and led them to the exit, while the crowd, in response, triumphantly proclaimed him a hero. As the Count confidently led the rescued to the exit, one of his companions remarked with astonishment how inspiring he was to those around him. This reminded him of their first descent into the dungeon together, a time when everything was just beginning. One of the survivors recalled that they had all been teleported here by the Holy Maiden Savior, and the Count was her subordinate. Now, after everything that had happened, they were surely enemies of Sophia, and all of them, including himself, could be killed. They realized they were now directly connected to Saint Sophia. Someone mumbled that they were now facing a world-scale enemy. One of the companions shook his head in disbelief, asking, "Do you really not understand how terrifying she is?" Wade's memories had revealed too much. Then a voice added seriously, "You should start panicking now. After all, your dragon Hua is currently holding off an attack in the capital all by herself." "Even if Hua is a top-tier dragon," someone said doubtfully, "she can't defeat the Dungeon Queen." These words hung in the air as if a reminder of the limits of even the greatest power. A grim premonition intensified. The enemy they faced was not just powerful, it was ancient, cunning, and connected to the very origins of this world's magic. The magical pulsation didn't stop, as if the dungeon itself was responding to his thoughts. One of his companions frowned and remarked, "Well, that's a problem. In that case, the capital will fall soon." She looked up wistfully. "And I've grown fond of this place," she added weakly. Another snapped her head up. "What super speed recovery? Maybe we should change our location. I don't know how it works, but it seems this is also part of your dungeon." The transfer magic worked instantly, and the group found themselves in a frost-covered cave where the walls shimmered with blue light. One of the fighters looked around and said in surprise, "Transfer magic, this snowy cave, it's one of my properties." Wade stepped forward, his voice filled with confidence. "You look too confident. Now we can fight without holding back." He took a step forward, then added, "It seems you still haven't understood everything." A wave of energy surged through the dragon's arms. Now he could destroy everything, no need to hold back, fearing he might harm those he needed to protect. He looked up, his eyes burning with battle fire. "Finally, I can fight at full strength. How many years has it been?" His voice carried a note of delight and a thirst for battle, while the frosty air trembled with his growing power. She gripped the hilt of her weapon, a slight smile playing on her lips. "Ha, intimidating power. All right, I haven't stretched myself in a while either." He took a step forward and cracks spread from the ground. The air between them began to vibrate with tension. His gaze was focused, muscles tensed, the fight was about to begin. Another transfer? The space around them distorted and the heroes were thrown into a new location, a boundless sea where lightning continuously flashed. The sky was torn by flashes and the water boiled with energy. "Even you will have to be careful here." The dragon slowly turned its head and rumbled deeply. "Did you say something?" The girl, without looking at him, replied reservedly, "Never mind. This is a hypergravity dungeon. No living creature can move here, and yet the enemy slowly approaches. He quietly says, 'So, how should I tear you apart, one by one, and it only gets harder?'